Hi, Carol.
Hey, Assalamualaikum. Just a minute. Let me check the camera here.
We see you. Hooray.
Okay. I might turn it off because this thing bugs me.
hmm No, but it's good to see you. It's good to see you. So you managed to watch the exchange I had with Khalid earlier?
Half, a little bit over half.
hmm
A
hmm
little bit over half. My sister called me, but yeah, I wanted to watch that to see if there's anything on it that you were going to mention. Then I would know what you were talking about. you know. But yeah, I watched a little bit over half.
Great. I mean, I can quickly recap about how, I mean, obviously, I was going to say secular Quranism is a great source of Muslim unity, and it would be a great thing if the Ahmadiyya Caliph were to um, discuss secular Quranism, and he sort of agreed. So I'm hopeful that it might actually happen, and he was kind of saying that he was planning to see the Caliph anyway, and
You
um,
might get an interview. You might get that interview. Audience, huh?
yes,
Audience, I guess you should call it.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
all right. Just don't
But
forget my position, Claire.
mhm.
I'm the Caliph of the United States. Just don't forget that.
No, no, I don't. I think it's an excellent idea that you declare yourself caliph, and people who don't agree will just come up to you and say, "I'll fight you to be caliph because I don't think you can be caliph," and that's a good way of starting the ball rolling about who deserves to be um, representative of
I'm just getting
white
people.
Muslim converts.
I'm just getting people not respecting the idea so far. But you know, if they're Muslims and if they're the ones that believe in predestiny, then you know, here I am. So they better
So
think
far,
twice about going against me.
ha- has any I suppose what you want really is for somebody to challenge you, and
We'll have to
then there
see
can
what
be a
happens.
kind of debate.
I'm making the point that the United States isn't going to have a foreign caliph. I'm making that point very clear. And if someone's better for the job, but I think they're better, I might advocate. I do get older every day, Claire, and
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know,
So I mean, unfortunately, people aren't interested in fighting over this position, and I'm wondering what we can do to entice them into doing so.
John Vance maybe would be interested in, but he's up there in Canada. He's Canadian.
Yes, well, I mean, you could have a fight over being Caliph of North America.
No,
That would.
Claire, we can't have that. The United States gets its own caliph, and it's me.
All right, all right. But I mean, you
All
might
right.
like to be, Caliph of North America, including Canada, and be boss of two countries.
Well, that would take a lot of negotiations and exchange of ambassadors and some negotiating to go on. I'm open to a lot of different ideas, but Canadians are different than Americans. I mean, everybody's different from everybody else.
Do tell us
So,
how you think they're different. I mean, if somebody asked you in what way are Canadians different, what would you say?
um, well, remembering from when I was a kid, I would say Canadians were more passive. Americans didn't used to be passive like this when I was growing up, like what you see now.
Yes, this is something I have noticed,
Hmm.
and I think it's the rolling out of the welfare state that pacifies so many people.
Well, and brainwashing about three generations in the school system to not defend yourself. A lot of that went on. Didn't used to be like that. What? Oh, I don't know. We're always talking about schools and stuff, but basically, if you try to defend yourself in the public school, you get more in trouble than the guy who or the
Who
person who
attacked you?
try. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They don't
So
want you to defend yourself.
so really, fundamentally, the laws and us, it's wrong. whoever makes it is evil or wrong or mad or stupid. And you would have thought in a democracy this would be relatively easy to overturn. But it seems that it doesn't really matter what kind of system you have. It's just that whoever's in charge, if they're low down, dirty, corrupt, crazy people, they're just not going to do the right thing. And therefore it's not enough to have the rules say what they say. I mean, obviously, the main thing is the enforcement. And if nobody obeys the rules, then of course it's not going to be enforced. And unfortunately, now we have such corrupt people that they think they can get away with not following the rules themselves. Or and if they don't,
Brainwashed,
hmm?
yeah. Corrupt, brainwashed. The problem, like you bring up, that if you have this many, uh, basically liberalism, basically what that does is it encourages irresponsibility, and conservative social conservatism promotes responsibility, responsible behavior. So as liberalism becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger gain and becomes more and more weird because there's no limit to it, social conservatives become smaller. And so now you got a voting problem going on. Yeah, they're not going to, why would anybody vote for being more responsible if they don't want to be responsible? They didn't even see it modeled in their home, and they just want to fool around and have fun as an individual. You can't build a military with that. You can't do much of anything with that. And because of that, you're going to have politicians who are more easily bought off, who are going to fall into wanting greed because they don't believe in responsibility. Responsibility is more than just a buzzword. You have to see it. You have to see it in a family. That's where you see it in the beginning as a kid in a family. Your dad's going to work, he's being responsible. Your mother's being responsible. Even if they both work or whatever, everybody's being responsible in some way. If you're too liberal, everyone's being such an individual, they're not responsible for anyone else. Now, how can you have good politicians or good government coming from that kind of a
Culture.
pool, from that
Hmm.
kind of a pool of
Of people who don't understand it. So really, it is a matter of changing the religion, because really, religion isn't just about the rules. It's also thinking of the individuals of the group saying, we are the people who always do this, and we are the people who never do that, and this is what gives any religious group its identity. Even
well, a
if
lot
it's
of
something
people.
trivial as never eating pork or beef or
You need
whatever.
you need a large group of religious people. Each person doesn't have to be religious, but you need a large influence of religion on the society. Liberalism really, and I thought this in junior high, believe it or not, and I have no idea why I was even thinking that, but in junior high, I thought that, liberalism only works if you're dealing with a bunch of socially conservative people. That's where it becomes outstanding. That's where it becomes new ideas can be explored without being told they can't speak. That allows a growth of ideas. But what we have right now in the United States, of course, is swinging the other way. The total, I mean, arresting people for thoughts to the point now. Oh, they made a Twitter post. Whoop de doo. Now they're arrested. I mean, it's gotten really pretty bad here, and a lot of people don't realize it because a lot of people don't play on social media, or they don't aren't involved in that, and they just think it's somebody making something up until it happens to them.
Yes. Yes. So it's all these things that are supposedly in existence because the West is supposedly the West, freedom, liberty, the rule of law, but in reality it only exists for certain people, and these people don't care about the rest of us. They don't care about the principle of the thing. And this leaves people at the bottom believing in conspiracy theories. And the people at the top have kind of worked out how to demonize and marginalize people already at the bottom. Like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're an extremist. You're a racist. All these labels will be applied to these
Well,
people who say the wrong thing.
yeah, the media is doing that. Yeah, sure.
And so it's the media who is the most powerful part of the ruling classes. In fact, the other parts of the ruling classes are afraid of it because the media really tells people what to think and how to behave.
You
It
know,
literally is. I think, you know what, Carol? I think the fourth estate is now the first estate, and the first estate in the ancien regime before the French Revolution was basically the French society was divided into three estates. The first estate is the Catholic Church. The second estate is the warrior class, barons and people who can find men to become
aristocrat.
soldiers for their king, and the third estate is basically the commoners, consisting of the middle and working classes, and those were the ones who initiated the French Revolution, because obviously what happened when the French king Louis got into trouble with all the money he spent on paying for the American Revolutionary Wars because he wanted to um, well he wanted Britain to fail. But anyway, he found himself not um, in debt, and he wanted the Catholic Church to pay for it, and the Catholic Church said no. And obviously, he couldn't ask the warrior class to do it because they had the arms, and if they wouldn't cooperate, what was he going to do? So all the taxes fell. The burden of the taxes fell on the middle classes, and they couldn't take it anymore. And that was the French Revolution.
Well, yeah,
And um,
there are more of us. We
pardon?
outnumber them.
Exactly. So they should. It's always sensible to see that the people that you rely on to do the work are not too unhappy. Yes, they will take a lot of crap for quite a while because they're a bit slow and stupid, and they don't want to believe in horrible things about their government, and they prefer to think that they're being well governed. But all the evidence is that our government doesn't care about us. It doesn't care about the national interest. It's not even governing in a way that is sensible for them. Why would you be doing crazy, stupid things and then denying it and not talking it through? But uh, the problem I find is that when I talk to ordinary people, they don't seem to want to have a sustained conversation about politics. They think, oh, you said your thing and I said my thing and we don't agree. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's talk about the weather. Oh, ain't that a cute little doggy? And that is how it works. Even people who are supposed to care about these things, they can't get to the meat and bones of it. That they're always sort of, yeah, but I don't like it. You know, there just doesn't seem to be any um, desire to get to the bottom of it.
Well, I do know. When I was growing up, everyone was told if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. And that if you at a some sort of dinner party or some social event or whatever, the taboo conversations were politics and I don't remember what the other ones, maybe sex, something like that.
Mhm.
But I don't remember what the other one was. But should stop it, because those are the things that people will start arguing over. So the idea was, go to the event and not start a fight. This is what people, even middle class people, like my family, if you consider that middle class, that's something
Yes.
my family said.
Well, I have a memory of going to dinner parties where people
Well,
did discuss politics.
Christine, let me tell you something. I'm dressed up like an Egyptian mummy because of all the jerks that like to take photos of the Muslim women and put them on memes with naked bodies. So I don't actually wear this in real life. I don't actually wear this in real life, but it's because of jerks like your friends making these memes that I come on like this, because I am not a public person. I see you hiding behind your avatar photo too. Okay, so that's how it works, Christine.
That's talking to her.
Well, I'm kind of sick of this. Yeah, I'm
She's
covering my face.
Catholic, by the way.
I
She's
don't want
Catholic.
some jerk from the internet trying to show up at my house again.
Mm.
Okay, which has happened several times. Just because they don't like what Carol has to say about something.
Mm.
Okay, now I assume you're not coming to my house because you must be a chicken yourself since you're behind a photo.
Hmm. Yeah, well,
Okay,
she's
Claire.
somewhere in the north of
I
England
know some
anyway, and I
comments
don't think
today.
she'll bother. But it's really attitudes, and the more I think about the first estate and the fourth estate, I mean, it, it's clear now how we are controlled by the news that we get from TV, radio, internet, whatever, and obviously we are also shaped by our associates and our environment. And if it's bad, well, we're just going to go bad. And why is our government so bad? It's because I think sometimes I speak to them and they say things like, well, I was only the ex education secretary. What did you expect me to do? I have no power. And you can imagine a whole bunch of prime ministers saying the same thing, and you might even agree with
Well,
them that they have no power.
it's their profession. These people go
Yes,
into
but so I'm
politics.
saying the system is wrong, and therefore,
It's a profession. It wasn't their profession in the beginning.
well,
You
it should be a
understand?
calling,
The
isn't it?
founding fathers were a bunch of farmers who had land and this sort of thing, and some of them had slaves or whatever. But that's pretty much, they were not a profession. Just like what we see now in Islam, we have an awful lot of people who their profession is being an imam or being a cleric, a scholar in Islam or something. That wasn't a profession before. That used to be something somebody did because they had a real calling for it. And they were halfway starving while they tried to do it if they didn't come from a family with money. But now it's a profession. And once something becomes a profession, people try to defend it, their profession, more than anything else.
Yes, but I can imagine the founding fathers thinking, that was horrible. That was horrible. What we had to live, what it
Well,
was like in Europe when you just had to follow the religion of your king, and if you didn't, you wouldn't get promotion, you wouldn't get into a university, you
well
wouldn't get
they
a good
were
job.
Claire. Another way to look at the founding fathers is that they were Englishmen who came to the United States because they didn't want to live in England anymore.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what was going on. So yeah, they didn't want a repeat of that in their new country, and they thought, we can just get rid of this king and do our own thing over here if they don't leave us alone with these taxes.
Yeah.
Jefferson wrote a letter one time. I don't remember who it was to, and he was pretty much alluding to some of this, and then supposedly it was taken out. I don't know if it was a speech or a letter, but the truth was they were starting to think that if they couldn't get rid of the king, they were going to move more west outside of those colonies and just leave them like ghost towns.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So they were going to win in the end, getting rid of the
Mm-hmm.
king. The problem always was, will he be able to come back with all these Anglicans coming in? Because, it turned into a big colonization thing. It was a bunch of people coming, and you were talking about mandate of heaven, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about mandate of heaven. Well, over here, that mythos or whatever, it was called manifest destiny. That was the mythos we had. Manifest
But
destiny.
because you felt like it was like, oh, you're like Jews, and Aunt Coulter lived in a place called New Canaan, and the Native Americans were like the Canaanites that you were going to
I
take.
don't know anything about that. They were pushed out of the side. Most of the Indian tribes were on the sides of the country. and they were pushed by the massive bunch of white people coming in. So they moved out into the plains. A lot of those tribes on the plains, that was not really their territory, and they were fighting each other at the same time because there was a lot less game out on the plains than what was on the east and west coast. Then you had the railroad being built to transport more and more Europeans to the west coast.
Mm-hmm.
And this was done on purpose because it was away. It was away from England because I forgot who was coming in on the west coast. Maybe it might have been the French or something else. They said, no, 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 we're going to take it. And they started going out there. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, you're talking about white people who came to the United States. The vast majority of them, if they have money or if they were poor people, did not want to live in Europe anymore because
Mm-hmm.
nobody leaves where they're at if it's going good for them. And so it was a different type of white people who came here. I mean, they were Europeans, obviously.
Yeah, they were a different breed of white
And
people.
I would say they were a little bit more aggressive. Like if you had like 20 in a room, the American ones that came were more aggressive. It's a lot
Mm-hmm.
like people talk about American Muslim women that, oh, they're not passive enough and stuff. Well, you try to be a passive person cannot function in the United States wearing a hijab. They have to be able to fight people off sometimes. So no, American women, white women who wear hijab are not from some of these Muslim countries. We're not as passive because we have to fight people sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just a little bit of a different reality.
And you had the pioneering spirit. I mean, that's kind
Putting
of
up with
self-selected.
putting up with someone like Christine Ramsey, only imagine it as three guys, right? You can't leave the house without someone being a jerk to you. Okay, so you have to believe in it. You have to have principles to believe in that. I'm a Muslim, but I'm not going to be something else. Whether Christine Ramsey thinks I look like a mummy or somebody else thinks that. The most I will do is maybe disguise myself, this, because I'm on the internet, or I'll wear clothes that are Islamically correct, but don't look like this because you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to wear
Mm-hmm.
this. It's difficult in a hot climate, though. It's very easy to
Yeah.
dress as a Muslim in colder climates. Like up in Canada, it'd be relatively easy,
Yes. Yes, I can imagine.
depending on where you are.
Yes. So you're
So,
saying, the Canadians being technically still British, would have soaked up the British outlook, while Americans,
well,
because they
I'd
had a
say
civil war and a revolution.
they're more passive, and they're not really adverse to being part of the British Empire. I didn't notice that as being a big problem when I was talking to Canadians.
Well, I suppose at the time they were proud of their,
And
their identity, but now
they're not, they're just more polite.
I'm sorry, you were
Huh?
roboting a bit. I can't hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me now? Woohoo!
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Yes, I can.
okay. So I
Um,
didn't hear what you said about Canada.
uh, I suppose I was saying that the Canadians would take on the same characteristics as the British, because they're actually, part of Britain. They're connected to Britain through the crown, and they didn't have they didn't have your revolution, they didn't have your civil war, and history formed them in a different way, and that might explain
Well,
their different characteristics.
they were, they were a little bit more like the ones who came to the United States, but a lot of the ones that came to the United States went up into Canada uh, after the Revolutionary War, were pro monarchy, so they went up.
Uh-huh.
So they're the descendants of the white people who came here that were pro monarchy. But the founding fathers and stuff, they just said, we're not going to pay these taxes, and we're going to do our own thing, and that's what they did. And but all these people that came here to this continent from Europe were a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more independent in thinking. Most of the
Hmm.
people, I'm not talking about rich people like Jefferson, he liked to go to France and all that. Most of the white people who came to the United States had no hope they were going to return home. Now, some of them did think maybe sometime way in the future they might be able to go. They did not.
I didn't hear that. You seem
Somebody
to.
who this is a different mindset, and I'm not saying this to make fun of Europe. More aggressive as white people because obviously a minority of them came from Europe, but they were more aggressive. Like if in the neighborhood, they would be a little bit more aggressive, maybe a little bit more fed up, maybe a little bit more.
Mhm.
I'm getting out of here, and hey, there's a chance to go on that clipper ship. I'm going to see if I can get
Yes,
on that. It's
yes.
just a different
It's
mindset.
kind
I
of
don't.
self-selecting.
Well, I'm not that adventurous. I don't particularly want to go to another country to try to colonize some place that I've never been to and never seen, and with no hope of returning home. Those are tough people, even if they
Yes,
were
to
little.
do it voluntarily as well,
Well,
because
yeah, yeah,
mhm.
yes,
But
and a
quite a
lot
lot
of
of
them
people were
came,
forced.
and a lot of them came for absolute reasons of religious freedom, such as my dad's family. You know, I don't know how many
Well,
generations.
your father's Irish, isn't he?
No, my father's born in the United States. His great grandfather, the family all came from Germany because there were Mennonites and they were being killed off. The German government was killing Mennonites. I talked to you about this before.
Oh, yes, because
So
they
they
wouldn't join the German army.
right, they were pacifists, wouldn't go in the military, and they thought it was undermining military service and all this, and they didn't like it. The government didn't like it, but that's why they came. Okay, but my dad, of course, my dad's grandparents left the Mennonites, became
Hmm.
some other kind of Christian. My dad was a military man. My dad was in the military. So
Hmm.
this thinking and stuff was just different. That people would go do something like that. I don't know where this kind of a frontier would be right now, unless you were trying to move to the moon or something. But that's really something that people made that kind of a decision. And because they made that kind of a decision, there was no reason that they were going to give it up, and they were going to fight to keep it because that was the last decision they were going to get.
Yes, it was for keeps.
Hmm?
It was for keeps. Moving.
Well, because you don't have enough money, you can't. You're
Yes,
stuck.
but it's not like a day trip or anything like that.
Yeah, it's like having a baby. Yeah, that's the baby. Baby's born. You're going to keep it, give it away, or whatever.
Yes.
But
Oh,
once
I
you
don't
do it,
like it.
you've done it.
Where's the returns department?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
But
It's a big decision,
would you like to tell us a bit more
and
about
religion is something
manifest
good.
destiny?
Religion, manifest destiny was what they taught. It was in all the papers of the time when there were people started. Okay, when they first did the East Coast and stuff, Virginia, the colonies. After that, they started a big push was gone to settle the West, and part of it was also the discovery of gold. But all the papers and stuff were talking about manifest destiny. It was our destiny to conquer this land, the whole continent,
Hmm.
because English and the French wanted to come in from the West Coast. Okay, so that was what they did, and that's what was in the papers. And people made money off of transporting these people across. Then you had the problem of
Hmm.
all the Indian tribes on the plains, so they needed to keep them away from the trains.
Hmm. Hmm. And the Monroe Doctrine is also part of manifest destiny, isn't it?
So they tried to force them all to become.
Force who to become what?
I think that was a protection thing. Let me look it up. That was later.
Uh-huh.
That was just. Let me look that up. I'm not sure what that was.
Yes.
Manifest destiny.
Maybe you keep dropping out. I
I'm
mean, the
sorry. I
word
don't know
sometimes.
why.
Yeah,
You know, yeah, it happens. I don't know. You put the thing on. I can just talk without this on my face.
yeah. Maybe if there was no picture, that there might be
Can
less.
you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what was. Anyway, this doesn't really matter. I mean, the
Oh dear, you seem to be not coming through again. I don't know what's happening. I, I can only guess at what you might be saying, Carol. I can't hear you
how
at
about
all.
now?
Yes, yes, I just heard you.
Can you hear me good or just a little bit?
A little bit, and then you roboted, and yeah. So,
Oh, this has to
um,
do with internet speed. This is internet speed problems. Okay, just
right,
a
right. Yeah,
minute. Let me
it's happening again.
see if my
Bandwidth issues, maybe. I'm sorry. It's not very good. Okay. Um, I will highlight, display the comments in the chat. Thank you all for coming. 5 of you. So, Amanda says the Spanish moving up through Mexico on the west coast and southwest. Jay Walker is calling us moaning minis. And I can't hear Carol. So I don't know if we can continue in this one-sided conversation. Oh dear, she's dropped out now. Well, thank you, 5 of you. I will. I was thinking I might. Here she comes. Hello again. Hello again.
okay. Can you
Yes,
hear
I can
me?
hear you. Yes, yes.
Yeah, sometimes you go off and come back on. It works better. Yeah. So let's see my nasty comments. I like looking at comments. This is new for me. Anyway, so what else do you want to talk about, Claire? I don't think
Well,
people want to hear me droning about history like that again.
well, I quite like hearing about American history, and I mean, I'm beginning to have this idea that really, if the founding fathers were, thinking the whole thing through properly, it was sort of, well, we're not going to be told what we can and can't believe, and we're not going to be told that Jesus is God. It's stupid, and we're not having it anymore. And what's the point of it? It's just pointless fighting, and
But they
and
did have the opinion, Claire. They did have the opinion that civilized people were Christians, some type of Christians. They did have that opinion.
yes, they'd have to say, well, Europeans are civilized. We are Europeans, and
Yeah.
we don't like the Jews very much, and the Muslims are, because they lost in the Crusades, didn't they? I mean, is that how the Muslims perceived it too? That they lost the Crusades?
I don't know.
Oh, right, because I suppose I took a very Eurocentric view of the Crusades, like, oh, it's a great thing, Europeans won, and then I heard the Muslim view about it, which
There was a couple
was
of
terrible.
crusades. I don't know. They're just fighting over Jerusalem and stuff. So I never really read very much about the crusades other
But I
than,
suppose for Europeans, it was a chance to acquire empire, and that was really what it was all about.
I just didn't. I just don't remember. I never read a book specifically on the crusades. I never read one on it.
And apparently, the slaughter was so bad that there were stories of the knights wading knee deep in blood and gore. So that was one of the things I remember hearing.
Oh God, there's the pervert Jay Walker. He's on. Oh, new two moaners, ungrateful moaners are bitter. We're not ungrateful just because we don't like talking to you, Jay. Thanks for the stream. Which country would Carol like to live in? I like the United States, Jay. Where do you live? Oh, you're over in England. Alhamdulillah, because we don't want Jay here. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know what his problem is. I'm American. Why does he think I want to live somewhere else?
Oh, he just likes being rude. He actually quite
Yeah, he's
likes
rude. He's
America.
rude. He didn't pick up the politeness of the English manners, did he?
Well, he's a bit of a I think he's a bit bipolar, to be honest.
Well,
Sometimes
he
he's
has no
nice,
manners. He
sometimes
doesn't.
he's nasty.
He hasn't absorbed British polite manners. Okay. Now I will have to admit the British outdo the Americans on polite manners. I do. I believe they
Hmm.
do.
Hmm.
Unless you're around some of the ones who really don't have any. But yeah,
Hmm.
they're polite. They know how
Yes.
to be polite. Canadians are politer than Americans.
Hmm.
But a lot of Americans are very polite too, but we're polite in a different way.
Hmm.
And yeah, I prefer to live in the United States. I don't want to live in England. I mean, I guess Jay likes it there and you like it there. I have no intention of ever living in England. I don't want to live there.
You visited Ireland too, didn't you?
Yeah. Hmm. I liked Ireland. It's too woke now.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's getting real woke.
What
I
did you
liked it.
think of Ireland when you first visited?
Oh,
I may have asked you,
I
but I
liked
forgot.
it. I liked it. It's my mom's family was Irish people. My grandfather came from Ireland. My I didn't know him. He came from Ireland, and her mother probably did, but I think they got a fake birth certificate somehow saying she was born in the United States.
Hmm.
Something.
And did you? So I suppose you must have visited Dublin and
No, I
oh,
stayed mainly in Cork. I stayed mainly in Cork, and I went over to Kerry. I
uh,
When I go somewhere, I like to spend some time, go look at something that a tourist person would look at, and then spend the rest of the time walking around seeing what's going on.
hmm.
And Ireland had everything. They had socialists, they had some socialists having meetings, had all kinds of stuff going on when I was there. Yeah, I was walking by. I was in County Cork. I was in City Cork most of the time, but I did go
Hmm.
over to
Hmm.
I didn't go up to Dublin and all that. No. I didn't go up into the Pale.
Right. You
But
didn't go.
it was fun.
Hmm.
I liked it a lot. I thought about immigrating there. We
And
tried
what
to do that.
changed your mind?
I couldn't. We cannot get proof my grandfather was from Ireland. There's a right of return for
Ah,
Irish people if
right.
their grandparents were from there. We couldn't get proof of it. But now I think it's probably gone too woke, especially with this stuff that they're putting an end to free speech in Ireland. I'm like, oh my goodness, that is so counter to Irish culture. It's unbelievable. It's no more free speech.
Yes, yes. You could get into trouble just for having stuff on your phone, even though you never posted it.
Well, it was never like that before because people got drunk and said all kinds of things in Ireland. The Irish didn't set up a government like that. But
Mm.
anyway, at my age, it's kind of hard to, new tricks and all that. So I'm just going to stay here. I'm an American. I'm staying here. This is the culture I was brought up in. I wasn't brought up in Europe. And
Yes, I think it's
I'm not rich enough. If I had a whole lot of money, I would have a house in Ireland, but I don't have enough money.
right.
Hmm.
But I guess if you had a whole lot of money, you have a big house in California.
Well, I
California.
don't. I don't have to have a big house. Location means a lot to me. I could go for a small house in Cork there, or
Hmm.
in Kerry, Glengarra, maybe even Tipperary. Who knows?
Right. And the locals were friendly.
Oh, in Ireland? Oh, sure, because they didn't hate
Hmm.
Americans.
Hmm.
So they would say something nice like, "Oh, my brother's American," but they don't they don't consider people from the United States who had Irish heritage as Irish. They don't consider them as Irish. We're all considered American as far as they're concerned.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm. So,
Hmm. So the when did Ireland? When was the last king of Ireland? I feel I should know this, but I don't.
oh, I don't know. Do you know the name of the first president?
No, no, no idea either.
Iman de la Vera.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, yes, I have heard of that name.
Okay.
But
So I don't know who the last king was in Ireland. That wasn't that what was
that must
going
be
on
several
was a fight
centuries.
for a republic when my mother was born and became a republic finally and
Right.
became modern Ireland. Mm.
Last
When I
king.
went to Ireland, though, it was quite a while ago. The Catholic Church was pretty much still in control. They had arrested some old guy who had brought in a huge suitcase of prophylactics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they dragged him to court. Well, obviously, if it's for personal use, you're going to get, you wouldn't get as much trouble. But he brought him to sell. Obviously, he was a really old guy. And the
Mm-hmm.
judge asked him, "Would you bring these for?" And he said, "Personal use." He had this huge suitcase of them. I mean, if he used one every day, he was not going to outlive the number of prophylactics he had in this suitcase. The whole island was laughing and cracking up about it. And
Uh-huh.
people used to, women and stuff, people used to go over to England. They used to take the ferry over to England and buy contraceptives there and then come back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or even go to the continent for abortions and then go back. I mean, that's what was going on. And now I guess you can buy them and all that.
Right, right.
Hmm.
Um, I think the last king of Ireland was King Rodri, King Rodri of Ireland, and that was it. He died in 1198, so that was a long time ago. And I guess after that, it was a colony of England. I think
Hmm.
that was how it worked out.
Victoria and yeah.
Hmm. So yes, it was Henry II who invaded Ireland.
They had their own parliament. I mean, they did have a parliament that, you could become a member in and all that.
Hmm.
And kind of like a House of Commons, House of Lords kind of setup. They did have that.
Yes,
Saoirse.
it's spelled Dale, isn't it? But I can't pronounce it correct.
Mm-hmm.
Dail. I know I
Dial,
pronounced
Dale.
it.
I don't know how. I
Yeah.
don't speak Gaelic. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Hmm.
But but anyway, that's just my heritage. I don't think anyone cares about that. Main thing is I'm American, and that's pretty much how I identify. Really, the heritage stuff is of interest because
Well, it
everybody
was.
likes to know where they came from, and
Mm,
lineage is important, and people like to know. I believe some of it's inherited and some of it is learned. So,
yes, I think the more distinguished you are, the longer you can trace your ancestry back back to, um, because I suppose it's usually the poor people who say, "Well, yes, I was born, obviously, but nobody recorded my birthday,"
well,
so
they
they would.
didn't. They wrote them in Bibles. If you have the
Mm,
old family Bibles, that are written in there.
hmm. Hmm.
Hmm. And people had their kids at home.
Yes, yes.
So usually, maybe no one even knew about a kid maybe until you went and registered them for school if there was a school there or the church. The church would have baptism records. See if I can find my grandfather's baptism record.
Then
That's
you
what
yeah,
would.
then you could come over and live in Ireland.
Yeah, but we have no idea where any of this stuff is. Nobody knows. And he was illegal when he came to the United States anyway. He jumped a ship.
Hmm.
He was a sailor and jumped ship, and he was illegal anyway. So,
Yes. Well, a recent complaint I heard was this was a friend who's interested in history, and he was saying that you can't find a proper history book. The way that European history is written about now is as if it were as if Europe was a complete identity and everybody agreed with each other, when of course they didn't. They were always fighting each other and they with their different
no, you got
languages.
to find history books written before 1940.
Hmm.
You have to find
To
history
get the
books
real deal.
written before 1940 to find more interesting history. Even the books on Jewish history by Jews from 40s and before are more interesting. And after World War II, the media and everything, they really pushed this idea of melting pot and all this, and we're all unity. They didn't want to. They really promoted that. Hollywood really promoted it, and then they kind of promoted Germans as evil. I mean, every single movie had the blonde evil man in it. I mean, it was just kind of, you know.
It's
But
not something I noticed,
oh
really. I
yeah,
mean,
you watch the old
yeah,
shows,
no,
watch the old movies.
what I noticed was that the villain was always English. Dracula was English, just any
Oh
Bond.
yeah, because they made him European. He's from Transylvania, don't you know? Yeah, they were trying to make him, yeah, like the European. Yeah, they would have that. But I'm talking about if you had a criminal. It's kind of like a lot of English TV. They still show Irish people as either sort of ne'er do wells that are kind of silly, or they would show them as criminals, right? There's the
or,
guard.
or,
Oh, the
or,
guard.
or
Are we going to get him
unreliable
now?
builders.
Oh, it's Maloney. He did it. Let's go pick him up. Put him in the nick. I mean, this is. So that's Hollywood. That's the N word, shall we say, in England.
Yes, yes, all that
So
racial stereotyping.
something like that. But
Mm,
yeah, I mean, everybody they play these kind of stuff. But do you know who you are? Do you know what you are, what you believe?
yes,
These things are important.
yes,
And
but. Mhm.
go ahead.
I was thinking, we were talking about Muslim unity, but then it occurred to me, well, why don't we talk about white unity? And it's like, well, where does one begin? What are you going to do with these people?
Do I
How are you
know
going
white
to unite
unity?
them? How are
I
you
don't
going
have
to
a
unite
problem
them?
with
They
it.
don't even have a religion.
I don't have a problem with white unity at all.
I,
I
I'm,
I I'm
I'm
I am I prefer, if I was to live in a neighborhood, I would prefer to live with a whole well, I do live in a neighborhood, but I would prefer to live around a bunch of white people. Now my next preference would be a bunch of white people who are also Muslim. And after that, oops, I'm sorry. I mean, my first preference would be white people who are Muslim, the same type of Muslim I'm in. And going down, oh, they're not being in the neighborhood with a bunch of white Muslims. They're not being in the neighborhood with a bunch of white people. I prefer that. I would prefer to function and live in a society that mostly white people. But that doesn't mean I don't have black friends. I have plenty of black Muslim friends. I've had black Muslim friends and other races that are friends that are Muslims because we have similar lifestyles. You know what I'm saying? But you can forget thinking I want to go move down into the hood. I've already lived in the hood and I don't want to do it again.
hmm
You
hmm
understand? So yeah. Yeah, so I'm kind of on the white nationalist side of all this. Do they have a good narrative? No. The narrative is terrible. They don't have a good narrative. And then they're talking about what is it? Christian nationalism. Okay, that's fine
It just makes them sound
as a
stupid,
as a
they
sort of
don't
a
know.
culture
It's
thing. But how can you form a government from that? Christianity was the the laws and stuff from Christianity came from the empires they were under. When you look at Judaism, Judaism was basically how do people who believe in God that are a part of a minority as a conquered people, how do they survive? Christianity is about the faith of the Abrahamic God, if we want to start using those terms, under an empire where they were giving legitimacy to the monarchs and stuff. Okay, so how does this translate into good governance when you don't have the empire over it anymore? See, I'm not seeing it because it's not clear what the rules are. Either you accept the Old Testament and accept those rules and initiate some kind of government based on Old Testament law, or you don't. And the Christian narrative is that they're no longer under the law. The law was just foreshadowing Jesus to come, or I don't know what the argument is, but it's very vague. You can't figure out how to run a government like that. If you're gonna start a Christian government from scratch,
well,
you
there's
can't
no
figure it
advice
out
in the
from reading
New
the Bible.
Testament, is there?
No, no, there's not, because they were Christianity in the beginning and under the New Testament was a belief system that was uh, actually part of Judaism as over governments that were already in existence. The United States, they came here, the founding fathers came to the United States, and they said, hey, we don't have to be under any of this stuff that happened before because it's just us over here. I mean, of course, there was Indians and stuff, but, they were busy oppressing them and moving them out and taking their happy hunting grounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, so they say, hey, we don't have to do any of that. They weren't like a new religion under a monarchy or governments that were already set up. So to me, when I look at Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, one view I can have of it is, how do you believe in the Abrahamic God in a certain situation? So Jews, they went to Babylon. The Pharisees went to Babylon. Iraq. They went to Iraq and they consolidated their writings and did their thing. And then you had a bunch that went down into Yemen, the Sadducees. I think the Yemen was also Pharisees, but Sadducees went down into Saudi Arabia, and they pretty much died out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They were the priesthood, weren't they? The
Pharisees.
Sadducees were the priesthood, and having
Sadducees didn't believe in an afterlife.
exactly the kind of like the liberal elite of today.
Cohens and Levi's were the two priesthood tribes.
Right.
And Sadducees, I don't know. I forgot some of
Yeah,
this.
yes, that's right. And the Pharisees were the kind of the ordinary people, like the
Legal.
transit.
They were the legal system. They were the ones that were. That's why they were in court. It was Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
They were they were the legal people, the
Yes,
law people.
they were fixated
And then you
on
had
the
other
rules.
kinds of Jews. One of the arguments about Christianity is that one of the big arguments during that time was whether or not to believe in an afterlife among Jews. Do we believe in an afterlife or not? And Jesus is seen as proof that there's life after death. The resurrection, the story of Jesus, his resurrection. This is proof of life after death. The other ones where they were brought alive from the death, in the Bible, there were some other people that came alive. This was showing as, some kind of a miracle or something that could be done by God. But Jesus, as the resurrection, is also viewed as everybody will come alive again, have a resurrection, that there is definitely life after death for everybody. Because the other people they saw that came alive were what? They were still in the world, right? They came alive and they're still in the world. Anyway, so Jesus, as far as Christian doctrine is concerned, in my view, it's their proof that there's life after death. Now, they didn't want to accept that, okay, or they didn't believe the story, or it never happened. I mean, whatever argument somebody has.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of that. Islam comes along and says, oh, yeah, there's a life after death. And oh, no, he's not God. And, the argument whether or not he's resurrected or not doesn't change Islamic ideology, because we don't think he's God, because we don't think coming back alive means you're God. Okay. So it doesn't interested in the that particular story, unless some of these debating people like to debate on it or whatever, which
Mm-hmm.
goes nowhere as far as I can tell. But
Well, I mean, it's so frustrating because, I mean, obviously, you need a book of rules, that's the Quran, and it's obviously the better system, but there are all these people pretending not to understand,
well, there's an
pretending
intact
not to
system.
see it.
It's an intact system, and you make a very good point. Let's say someone's just trying to be pragmatic, and okay, we need to have some kind of religion that's going to promote social conservatism, which Judaism certainly does promote, except they're getting pretty woke themselves. They do promote that, but how do people? I'm sorry. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
I see you. No, not you.
Oh,
I forgot. I lost my place.
right.
My thought. I lost my thought here.
You were talking about Jews who have been getting pretty
Well, they're
woke,
too
and
woke. I mean, they've gone woke. In the United States, they went from orthodoxy because they weren't kept in ghettos here. When they came, it was, oh, get a load of this place. We don't have to stay in a certain area,
Hmm.
right? And so, but
They can
they
go live
did.
in
They
the
tried.
suburbs. Mm.
Hmm?
They can go live in the suburbs.
Yeah, well, they asked the question. They actually asked the question when they were getting off the boat, and they say, "You just go find somewhere, go live wherever you want." So that was different. And so then they had the problem of, a lot of Jews, Orthodox Jews and stuff, were losing their identity. So some rabbis came up with the idea of conservative Judaism, and then they came up with reform. These were all started by Orthodox rabbis. And then the Reconstructionist idea was to try to reconstruct Judaism from their sources, going from the bottom up. So they had these different ideas, and that's what America did to them. So it was like, oh, we don't have to live in a ghetto. We don't have to live in a certain area. And they just were not going to treat them as non-citizens once you became a citizen. The people of the United States did that to was the American Indians, but they did not do that to the Jews. American Indians were given separate nation status.
Hmm.
Okay. Because in the
Hmm.
very beginning, white people were the only ones who could become citizens anyway. I think it started out with English people, then it moved to eventually any white person of good character, and then it was just like, anyone who wants to come that's good character or whatever. Not
Yes.
a criminal, so
Hmm.
lie on the
They
application
go to
about whether,
Australia.
yeah, something like that. So
Hmm.
anyway, things have changed. It's only been 200 years, 250 years, Claire.
Well, things, a lot of things can change in that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Um,
But the
and I
Americans need a moral code. They do need a moral
But
code.
everybody does. It's not just
Yeah.
Americans. I mean, the Europeans are just, well, away with the fairies too, because they don't have a religion that they believe in. And it's like all the religions that you've heard about, the, the least they do is make people marry before they have children. That's the least your religion can do. And if it can't even do that, then it's not
Well,
up to the job.
it's like what I think I said it earlier on here. Liberalism promotes irresponsible behavior, and you can't have a good government run by irresponsible people. So as the country becomes more and more liberal to the past a certain point, like they don't even believe in the family structure anymore, past all that, they're not even smart enough to realize you can't cut up kids because the kid has a idea that they're the other gender now. They can't even look at that anymore and realize there's something horribly wrong with that because they don't have the boundaries anymore that people of faith that were had a moral system that had morals are the people who can handle liberalism.
Yes.
It
Yes,
becomes
it's,
a
it's the same
really
analogy
it's
about
a,
Dr. Spock,
Dr. Spock.
who who had all these very liberal ideas about parenting, didn't he?
Oh, he
And
was horrible, Dr. Spock. He thought you should leave babies in the crib crying their heads off.
did
I mean,
he?
he
I,
was
I I
kind
thought
of,
he said he was a very liberal parent. I thought that, okay, that's my memory of it, what I know about
oh, well,
him.
he had horrible ideas for infants. He had that idea. And I think my mom tried it with me for a little few days, and that was the end of it. Dr.
Oh,
Spock,
really? What did she try on you?
let them cry themselves to sleep. Put them in there, put them on a schedule, let them cry themselves to sleep. After a couple of days of that, she said, "Oh, forget this. This isn't how you bring up a kid." She'd already been married 2 years, and then you unspoil them. You don't do what he was saying. Let them cry their heads off like that. It's inhuman. That's how
Yes.
you create kids with attachment. That I mean, that probably wouldn't happen with two parents in the house, even
Yeah,
if
but
you
I
were putting
suppose,
them to bed
if
like that. But that's not.
but if you've done everything, like you've changed its nappy, you've given it its milk, and you and this and it's been up. I mean, I suppose at one time. at some point you'll have to let it, if you think you've done everything that you need to do for it,
Well, it's
like,
a lot more than bringing up a kid's a lot more than changing their diapers. But I'm just saying he wasn't the okay. That was his idea, you know.
yeah. I mean, my memory of Dr. Spock was him telling parents to be more liberal, and I was just making the point that it would make sense if your own parents were very illiberal, and you wanted to be a bit kinder to your kid, but if you're already liberal, then
Well, it's already a breakdown of religion.
yeah,
Breakdown of religion.
you're roboting. But I suppose maybe Americans don't know their power, because they are so rich and so powerful. Everybody looks up to them and imitates them. So when they go bad, you know, perhaps they do more harm than they realise. Oh right, I think Carol's has dropped out.
Oh boy.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
Okay. So what were you saying? The liberal.
Um, well, I was talking about Dr. Spock encouraging liberal parenting, and that would be all right if the parents were quite conservative to begin with, but not if they were already liberal, because then there would be no
Well, I don't
boundaries at
know.
all.
I don't know. I have no idea what he said about adolescence or anything because my mom threw the book out. I have
Uh-huh.
no idea. She gave up on Spock from the beginning. It
Hmm.
was based, I wasn't brought in that kind of a household. My dad was part of our family, and he was the boss. Our noisy toys got put away when he came home from work. My mom knew
Hmm.
at time he'd come home from work. He didn't go to the bar after work so he could calm his nerves. He left work and came back to the battlefield of the home, you know?
Right.
So that's what he came out. Now it's the kind of home I was brought in. And my parents were old enough to be my grandparents. My friends, it's a different story when I was growing up. Some of them had divorced families and some didn't. I can categorically tell you the ones where the fathers were out of the home, those kids were running amok more,
Hmm.
So but yeah,
Hmm.
we need conservative values and stuff. So how do you get that in a country where most people have even if they haven't given up on God, I would say most Americans, they're not quite like Europe in that. I would say an awful lot of Americans believe in some type of God, even if it's one of their own imagination or something. I'd say a lot of them believe somehow in that idea, but they don't have any of the boundary rules anymore. The Catholic Church used to have rules to it, but
Yes.
you won't find them in the Bible. You won't find them in the New Testament, those rules they had.
Yes. There's something called the Catholic Compendium or something. I think I
Well, I'm
have a
talking
copy of
about
them.
how to behave. Like you weren't allowed to
Mm.
mouth. When I was a kid, you were not allowed to mouth off at a priest. I remember seeing, a catechism. I used to go to catechism on Saturdays. The priest would grab the misbehaving boys by the ears and drag them down the hall like that.
Hmm.
They used to be mean until the state said you could not hit kids anymore in classrooms. That's when they lightened up. They used to smack us with all kinds of stuff. Not me, not
Because
me.
you were
And
a good girl.
no, not good girl. I didn't go to the Catholic school. We just went on Saturdays. The kids that got smacked around most were the Italian boys and the Portuguese boys because they were mouthing off. Their parents, a lot of them were fishermen, and they were just tougher kids that fooled around more.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You know.
Right.
Anyway, so you
So,
wanted to talk about unity? Is that what you wanted
yes,
to
yes,
talk
and
about?
I'm saying, what can you do with white people? They don't believe in anything. I guess, if they don't believe in anything, I guess the obvious answer is to make them believe in something,
Well,
or give them a story they want to believe
I
in.
see an attempt. I see an attempt among white people in the United States to try to recreate a patriarchy idea, but some of the stuff I'm hearing, that's not what a patriarchy family looks like. It's like they're trying to reconstruct something they're unfamiliar with. You know what
What
I'm
have you
saying?
heard?
Well, just this traditional women thing. Like, I don't know, there was some, I don't know, white lady. I don't know. I'd never followed her. It was in one of the chats today or something about she's getting a divorce and is going against traditional women. I guess she was a big promoter of traditional marriage where the wife stays home, kind of a red pill version, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And so now she's saying, no, that was bad and why it was all bad. I don't know. I never followed her or paid attention to it. But it's like those guys, uh, like Muhammad Hijab and them. I don't know what they're talking about.
Well,
It's
I mean,
what
he
they
was
read
talking
red
about getting
pill and
breakfast in
decided to shove
bed.
it. What they read red pill, shoved it on the Islam, and they're promoting something ridiculous. Families don't survive with people behaving like that. That's not how they survive.
Hmm.
Okay, you have male men, white men. Uh, Too many have no fathers in their homes now. It was a culture that had a chivalry to it. Some of the most polite men were actually the ones that make fun of cowboys. They were extremely polite. Even the cowboys, when they used to go see hookers, they used to take baths, get a flower, and act like they were going on a date. There used to be not a lot of women in the West.
Hmm. Hmm.
But they had a chivalry to them and they were polite to women. Now, it doesn't mean bad things never happen around white people because we're criminals, they're rapists, they have all that stuff too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Chivalry that they followed. And it was always said that cowboys were real gentlemen. It wasn't all a big bar fight in the OK Corral, like what's on TV or something. They were very polite to women.
Hmm.
And so what's happening is people are trying to reconstruct. They know they've lost something and they're trying to reconstruct it, but they don't have enough people who remember it anymore. But they're trying. I see white people are trying to recreate this because just now they're starting to feel the loss. It's like, what happened to us? Because now they're the ones, they're having too many kids that are going into drugs and doing all these problems that there was pretty much untouching them for a long time. I mean, there's always been some involved in it. This isn't the painting a picture that it was all some perfect past. I'm not painting that picture. But people certainly all knew it was wrong. And white men did not think it was okay for some guy to beat his wife up. They
Hmm.
didn't think that. They wouldn't have said someone disagreed with you, whack them. Now we had the McCarthy era where they went after anyone who was communist and they went after stuff like that. But in general, white people, they didn't. No one else in the neighborhood would have thought that was good behavior. Let me put it that way.
Hmm.
And they
Hmm.
never would have been able to justify it. When I was real young, if a boy hit a girl, even if the girl hit him, he was in trouble. They were not allowed to hit girls, and they were not allowed to hit someone wearing a pair of glasses.
Hmm.
And when my mother went to school, boys and girls were on separate ends of the playground. And she went to school in the United States. They
Hmm.
had a line. Boys were on that side, girls were on this side.
Hmm.
They couldn't play with each other at recess.
This was how old?
Oh my goodness. My mom would be, well, if she was still alive today, you mean? She would
Well,
be,
I mean, when did you have segregation at schools? I mean, I really meant high
well,
school,
my mom would be
primary school.
108. My mother would be 108 if she was still alive today.
Hmm.
So it was when this was in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
and there was heavy Catholics, a lot of
Hmm.
Irish kids. When she was super young, she was at the Catholic school, so it was pretty much Irish and Mexicans. Like Mexicans would come in, and the Mexicans didn't have to buy the right kind of pants. They were allowed to come to school in jeans because their parents couldn't get them a pair of those kind of pants.
Right.
The uniform was, the women had to wear a dress, and I don't know if they had a uniform or not, but the guys had to wear long pants.
Hmm.
And then the Mexicans were allowed to come in their work pants, which was jeans for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And the first days they would come, they didn't speak English, so they would pair them up with someone who spoke English, because they spoke Spanish, they didn't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would come wearing dressed up like in serapes and stuff their first day, and then the second day they wouldn't have the serape anymore, and then eventually somehow they ended up with a pair of jeans or something. They were all working, these kids all worked and
How
stuff.
old were they?
Well, child labor. They used to work in agriculture,
Right.
pickers and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so it was like that. I mean, things have changed. This idea that kids can't work, that's pretty new in our history.
Yeah, because American fiction movies, the paper boy, throwing
Mm.
the paper into
Yeah, so can white people
houses
get unity? I don't know. I
because they
don't
haven't got a
know.
religion.
I think they need something
They just need
that
to
teaches
accept that
them.
everybody needs a religion. It's not just white people.
Yes, yes, but there tends to be among white people, there tends to be the when they gravitate towards other religions, when they leave Christianity, let's say. Actually, some of them actually will become Muslim or Jewish, but a good number of them will go explore Buddhism or
Or
some.
Hinduism.
Well, Hindus sort of tied up with cult stuff because of the Hare Krishna and all that. But yeah, some will do that. But Buddhism seems to be the one that they'll hop off onto first. I mean,
Yeah,
even I've been
because it
up in a
has very
Buddhist
few
monastery, huh?
rules. Because it has very few rules, and it all
No,
seems.
because it's far away from Christianity. Christianity has gotten such a bad mouthing off of liberal ideology that many that Christianity is old fashioned and for stupid people, but they didn't buy into the idea that Judaism and Islam necessarily were. So a lot of people that are kind of familiar with Christian, like people who aren't anything, because now we have people whose parents are reconstructed pagans and stuff, say, right?
Hmm.
So they decide they want a religion, but they like Europe has really bought into the idea that Christianity is full of it. So, but Islam will seem familiar to someone who's heard of Christianity or knows something about it. You're talking about a lot of the same characters in the stories and stuff, Moses, David, all these, Jesus.
Hmm.
And so it seems somewhat familiar. So there's sort of a familiarity about it. Um, but doesn't seem like maybe you're stupid for believing it. And then you have some people who have no sense of boundaries at all. And so there we do have people who've converted who have no sense of boundaries. Like they just don't know what you're supposed to do for any. I don't know. It's an interesting problem. But Europe and the United States, they need some kind of moral code that people actually believe in. And this, unfortunately, this liberalism idea of trashing Christianity to this point has caused a vacuum. So you have some that won't return to Christianity. Then you have white people saying, no, we're going to be Christian nationalists. This is our heritage. Okay, well, it wasn't your heritage before a certain year, right? I mean, Europeans changed their religion once in a big way. And if they have to do it again, they can. And if they do it again and they practice it through their culture and their interpretation of it and their lens of it, it will be European. Same
Hmm.
thing for America. It would be European. And that's what white Muslims, I think that's the best option for them. I mean, obviously, I chose it myself. I think that's the best option, but it's not helping anything that we're having this massive bunch of immigrants coming in that are behaving badly because Europeans don't want to be around people behaving like that, and neither do white Americans. So we have a
Understand.
problem going on. So it's a big
Mm.
problem going on. But I think white nationalists have a point, and I think it's a good argument. One of the arguments is they don't like diversity.
They don't like diversity, right? Ooh, the white nationalists don't like diversity. Well, they're promoting diversity. They're not promoting some idea we're going to change everybody all into the same beige person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're promoting diversity by promoting the idea that white people should just marry each other. I'm promote the idea that white people should marry each other because this set of DNA is going to die out if they don't do something, and if they lost my train of thought here. If they become Muslim and they are marrying each other, it's going to provide a bigger block of white people for dawah, because right now white people are useless for promoting Islam. They're shunned by the immigrants. Their
Mm-hmm.
price for becoming Muslim is LARPing around as the immigrants, or they're woke, the woke nonsense. If white people, massive amounts of white people became Muslim, they'd be able to do dawah, convince other white people to become Muslims. They'd be able to preserve their DNA in some way, because I don't think, I mean, I don't believe that we're all pedigree dogs or anything, by the way. I'm not promoting some idea like that. Like, oh, yeah, you're going to marry the best choice you have. People are going to marry the best choice they can get. If you have a massive amount of white Muslims, that would be a massive amount of white people preserving Western civilization, because Western civilization was created by the white man and it's preserved in the white man. And when you start running into this other stuff, you're having people that are coming in imitating it or something else. So preserving Western civilization also means the white people have to be preserved in some way. So I don't think all their talk is stupid. No, I don't. I don't believe that. But they have a bad narrative, and it's a little bit too much. We're gonna do away with everybody else and sit here and smoke our bongs watching TV. And I'm not going to get married and advocate. No, I'm not going to do anything responsible. Their narrative has gotten really bad. So, yeah, I mean, that has to be cleaned up some way. And they, of course, won't talk to white Muslims. So, they don't want to talk to white Muslims because they think we're race traitors. Right? But it's a complex problem. But I think they should be promoting their race and their culture, and get onto it with reconstructing it, because it's becoming ruined. They're ruining their own culture. Okay, white people were not a bunch of people that sat around smoking a bomb watching TV. That's not what they used to act like. And that got started up in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. That kind of behavior. They didn't used to act like that before. As a group. I mean, obviously, have alcoholics and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't think they're stupid for wanting to do what they want. I think they have a really poor narrative. And I think a lot of human type people aren't going to buy into their narrative very well, you know? It's kind of like if I listened to Muhammad Hijab, if I'd never known Muslim, if I'd never ran into Islam through books first and all this and became a Muslim, if I ran into someone like Muhammad Hijab, I wouldn't have gone anywhere near it, Islam at all. The white nationalists have to make themselves into a stellar example of what white civilization actually promoted as an individual. Real men. They have to do that. And the women do too. And they're trying to adopt these ideas and reconstruct it because they're not sure what to do. So you got the red pill idea, and then you have this quiver film movement. I don't know if you've heard about that. Ooh, Claire ran away. Okay. Let's see.
I think I might have nodded off. Now on. Hello, Carol.
I don't know how to her, but
You dropped
there you
out.
go,
You dropped out.
Matt. Yeah, I don't know how far you got. I don't know. I
Uh,
want to talk about something you want to talk about, Claire. I don't want to keep yakking about.
um.
Oh, you
Well,
want to talk
I
the
was
white
just.
people? Yeah, they need a new narrative. I talk to white people. The white nationals need a new narrative.
Yes, and so far it's just rejection of Islam, and they don't seem to think that they even need a solution. They just carry on playing the blame game. It's the Jews. It's and they don't seem to get any further than that, in
Yeah,
my view.
I don't know. England's a different story than here. We have a lot of people who live off the grid in the United States. Quite a few white nationalists or people setting up their own militias live off the grid. Those type of people, and then you have other people, other white people who are more city dwellers, I guess you would say, and then you have some farmers who still have family farms, which are almost all taken away by corporations. But white people, I think, have a little bit of a problem in the United States, like the Irish had dealing with the English, with Victoria and all that. Queen Elizabeth, I'm sorry, Queen Elizabeth. They did not understand that they had to be way more cohesive than they were. Like the different little chieftains and different, they did not work together well.
Hmm.
A lot of white Americans from my generation and before were too individualistic. Like when they had the Revolutionary War with George Washington. I don't know if
Hmm.
you've heard this story. They brought in, of course, people would show up with their own weapons and stuff because you're going to fight, fight, fight. And they didn't have a real military, so they're going to fight the English now, right?
Hmm.
So they had these guys from Virginia, which were basically Irish people or Scottish plant or farmers. I guess farmers is what we call them here, Irish planters and stuff that had come to Virginia, and they were tall. They were pretty tall,
Hmm.
large white guys,
Hmm.
and they're pretty good fighters. But none of
Hmm.
them could follow rules. So they would show up in camp to fight. They do their battle, and then you know how you have the camp sitting there waiting because they're going to plan the next battle. They would just go off
Hmm.
hunting for a few days. I mean, they just would not follow orders, and some of the English that were having to deal with them were like, these people just kept leaving. They said it doesn't matter because they show up when the fight starts.
Hmm.
Do you understand what I say? There was sort of a interesting difference in culture that was shown there. They
They
just
didn't have the army discipline.
it's not so much army discipline. They were not used. They were so independent. They were not used to this sort of direction where you'd be told to wait on a battlefield. You're going to wait in a camp for 4 days for a battle. If they knew there was going to be a battle in 4 days, they were going off hunting and doing something else, and then they'd show up.
Hmm.
It's a real funny thing when you're reading it. But the older Americans, the Irish, and they were like that. And so we have a situation where the cohesiveness of white people isn't good enough in the United States because they
Too
they
libertarian.
believed in liberalism. They believed in liberalism. They liked it. They were the type of people who liked being independent. Well, the country became too crowded to really live like that anymore. And the national world, you need a standing army now, right?
Yes.
We can't deal like that. You can't if people really want to live like how a lot of white people want to live, it wouldn't look like this.
I'm suddenly reminded of Davy Crockett. I can't remember what he was famous for, but I think he's an
Oh yeah,
American.
he's an old famous. Uh, didn't he die at the Alamo or something? I don't know. Yeah, he was a frontiersman. These older stories, they're talking about small population of people. So
Hmm.
you hear about people that maybe you wouldn't have known about,
Hmm.
like Annie Oakley and these people. But that's only 250 years ago, Claire. And then they got rid of slavery in this country. There's a bunch of white people got rid of slavery.
Well,
This
maybe we should
country
bring it back.
progressed in morality for quite a while. And what's happens is there's, it goes up and then it starts to decay. It's kind of like economics. There's a point of diminishing
returns.
Diminishing returns. So the economy is going to hit into diminishing returns and all this kind of stuff. And the answer seems to be everybody in Europe and the United States trying to freeload off each other. That seems to be the big plan. They want to go into socialism and communism. All of our countries in the West have some forms of socialism in it already, like public schools and, building public hospitals, this sort of stuff.
Roads and railways.
But yeah, I mean, there's some of that in it already. But if you want to keep progressing to the idea of handouts as an economic choice, you're going to end up with very irresponsible people, a large number of children born to irresponsible people because the responsible people can't afford it, and a government that's totally irresponsible to the point that the World Economic Forum has made it a vassal state. The beginnings of this all started when they came up with the Federal Reserve. I forgot who was president, but he fought it off. One of the presidents fought it off. Then they caved into it. Big fat mistake.
Why did they cave into it?
You could talk people into doing things. I don't know. I don't know why.
I suppose the whole idea is like, well, what
we
was
went
the
to paper
alternative?
money.
What was the alternative?
World War II, we went to paper money. That's when they started having paper currency in the United States. So then somebody got the bright idea, if we do this, we can have more money than the gold we have. All right. It was a banking idea.
It's shaking the magic money tree.
Something like that. They just came up with this. The bankers came up with this idea. Bankers came up with it.
And it sounded like it could work in theory, but it becomes a behavior.
Well, it didn't work in theory. It was on the gold standard, and then what happened is the reserve money and everything. Somehow the United States talked the Saudis and the other people to use the reserve currency as the American dollar. So that has been propped up by oil for many years now. And how did they get that? They pretty much stuck it to the English. After World War II, the Americans stuck it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Churchill thought they were going to have some big agreement and all this, and they just pretty said, no, we already made an agreement. It's not you. You're not in it. So, but I think white people should. I think white people should get it together more. They should. Mm-hmm. They should. And white Muslims should marry each other, because then they'll have a big enough base of Muslims who are not LARPing around as foreigners, which will make Islam attractive to white people in the United States, which will create a very much more responsible white people, because they're in decay now, just as everybody else is in the United States.
So the answer must be to persuade somebody who will be poster boy for this whole idea. Somebody who, is prepared to discuss secular Quranism in a positive way, who is high status or at least perceived.
The problem is with the white people is if they start talking like how I am, they're going to be called a white supremacist. And Islam is very much against this idea of racist supremacy, but it is not against people being cohesive ethnically. It says in the Quran, all the major tribes, so that you may know each other. It didn't say everyone's going to turn into a big beige blob and we're not going to have our own cultures anymore. It says so you'll know each other. So there has to be an expression of Islam going through a large group of white Americans for it to get anywhere. Because like I said earlier, right now, white people are useless for dawah. Just useless in reality. You can't
Mm.
take people into these masjids and start LARPing around like you're a new immigrant to a country. We're not new immigrants. I mean, it's the whole thing's ridiculous. And you don't have to be like that to be Muslim anyway. But nobody
So,
believes that because they think, oh, you white Muslims, you're a joke. You don't know what you're talking about.
so who is the closest ideal to being a white Muslim that people might have heard of? I mean, I suppose I think of Jonathan Brown because he's a good-looking sort of guy, but I know he hasn't got any principles.
Well, I would say of Hamza, but he seems to be kind of woke to me
Yeah.
too, and he's kind of woke on the international stage. There's a lot of this promoting the idea that Muslims, a good Muslim, is so passive they won't defend themselves. This is so they're creating this image that Muslims won't do anything. Now this is totally. I see you got Brother Khalid's picture up. This is totally different than what he's saying. He's saying that they're playing a long game. So you have a group of Muslims who are trying to play a long game, and then you have a group of Muslims that are trying to brainwash Muslims into not defending themselves. Do you understand the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't know a lot about Ahmadiyas, but from what I understood from what you were talking about, they're playing a long game in that they're trying to get people to get into the spirit of Islam first and to see it in action, and then maybe there'll be more converts and all this. It's pretty much what Brother William Briannas is pretty much saying too. They're not wrong.
Yeah.
See, my view is that Muslims do need to defend themselves. White people need to defend themselves. Why not become Muslim and defend yourselves? Because you're not defending yourselves right now. And this narrative that the white nationalists are putting forward isn't working. I mean, I guess they're showing up for demonstrations about too many immigrants being places, but the narrative isn't good. It's not attractive to a lot of white people listening, having this kind of hate because they're projecting hate. You don't need to project hate in all of this, right? But their
Yeah.
narrative seems to project hate, and then the white nationalists who don't project that, their books are banned.
Are they?
Yes, you it's pretty hard getting a David Duke book in Europe, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, pretty hard to get it. So you can't get that stuff. But as a Muslim, we believe God created all of creation and there's good in all of creation because God himself is good. So there's a potential for all of this to become a just society, to improve and become something good. Now, if one group wants to preserve the white man, why not? God created the white people. Why we're just going to trash this bunch of people for no reason? No.
So white people just need to
They need
accept.
a new narrative because they don't any longer have that cohesiveness of Christianity in a way that was militant. If you look at the progression of thoughts about Jesus, even over time, this extremely passive type of Christianity that doesn't defend anything, that's absorbing everything, is sort of like Hinduism. It's not what real Christians used to act like. A few hundred years ago, they weren't acting like that.
Mm-hmm.
Who did they think created the armies in Europe? It was a bunch of Christians. They weren't standing around saying we're not going to do anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Mennonites were so hated in Germany, because they wouldn't do their military service. They were seen as traitors to the country and demoralizing. Like if you're going to have a bunch of people doing this, they weren't going to have a military kind of thinking. They didn't like it.
Yeah.
Tolstoy liked the pacifist stuff. He liked that a lot because of the too much
because
fighting.
He wrote War and Peace.
Well, he wrote something. The kingdom of God is within, and he wrote another book both of these books specifically talk about Christianity and his argument that Jesus was a pacifist. He wrote two books like that, but everybody knows about War and Peace.
Mm-hmm.
So he's from these. Anyway, all these things have good things. Will you defend yourself? Is that the last thing you do? Islam says, yes, you can defend yourself, but you must use the least violence you can. Like the ideal would be no violence, and then the least, not this stuff we saw from ISIS. It's just too much. So this stuff is just too much. It's projected this way. Islam would really help white people. A normal form of Islam. Okay.
Yes.
And rules would be helpful. And if white people start becoming Muslim and marrying each other, because what we have right now in the United States, converts to Islam marry out of their ethnicity because they don't see someone from their own ethnicity to marry right away. Or, I like when I was.
The promotion of secular Quranism is imperative because that's the only thing that will make it mainstream.
Something, but my problem with your idea is a single.
Well, okay, you
it's a huge problem, Claire. Claire, it's a huge problem. I do not ever want to live under socialism, communism, a dictatorship, any of that stuff. Ever do I want to live like that. And the Europeans are buying into it, and they're going to end up living like that first. They're going to end up living like that if they don't watch what they're doing. And the United States is going to end up like that too. It's already gotten to the point that American citizens are censoring other people. I mean, we're turning into a bunch of Nazis over here. Censoring people. You can't say anything at work. People are afraid to talk at work now. Yeah, this is horrid what's happening to this country. Absolutely horrid.
So you must fight it before it gets worse.
Yeah, people need to fight it, and they need to pull their children out of school.
Before they fight it, they need to know that they will win. And if you
they need to do something. And they need to pull their kids out of school because you cannot reverse 8 hours of brainwashing in 20 minutes. You can't do that.
There's a lack of a sense of urgency, isn't there?
No, it is. It's huge because it's an integrated curriculum. You cannot just, even if they're going to let you, which they're not now, but even if you're going to sign a paper and say, I don't want my kid in the class talking about transgender, it's in every other subject. Every other subject is encouraging this type of thinking, this type of, there is no morality. It's all subjective. It's all what you want. But anyone tries to do anything, they're being shut up. This is the behavior of communists. Okay, that's what we're seeing right now is communist behavior in the schools. And our children are being indoctrinated. Just like the Nazis had what? Kids reporting on their parents. This is very horrible what's going on. And you have too many people now who don't remember before. Did you see what I'm saying, Claire?
Yes, I suppose.
They don't remember before. So you say they can't take their kids out of school. I'm saying they better take them out. They better take them out of these public schools if they want to save this country. It's one thing. But they need to do something
else too. That you've got to give them something that they can do that has a realistic prospect of success.
That is a realistic possibility, Claire.
What?
It's a realistic possibility. Way more people can take their kids out of school than you think in the United States.
But they don't.
Well, they don't because they want babysitters and they don't think it's necessary and they don't remember school being that weird when they were in it. Okay. It got weird. It got pretty chaotic during the Vietnam War. The schools, my parents had no idea the schools had gotten that crazy back then. I was in school during Vietnam.
What happened?
Well, people were using drugs on campus. Older guys were having sex with students on campus. Teacher were making passes at some of the girls. Some of the teachers were having beer parties at their houses. And this was a little conservative school. My parents didn't let me out of the house hardly. I didn't get to go partake in any of that weirdness.
Mhm.
But that stuff was going on and everybody knew it at the school. My parents never would have had us in a school like that. They'd known it had gone that crazy. One time a sailor came on campus, had sex with one of the girls. A
Hmm.
sailor.
Hmm.
Right? It was a small school. It just was not like that when my sister went to school there. And she's a little bit older than me. It just wasn't like that because they had a bunch of liberal teachers. There was one teacher that was telling students, there was one teacher in junior high that was openly teaching communism in his class, teaching the kids to become communists, a political science teacher.
Mhm.
In my high school, uh, there were a couple of affairs going on with teachers, and they dummied down the education and stuff because nobody, they dummied down the grading system to this sort of a bell curve, a curve.
Mhm.
So the A was whoever got top score in the class. Well, they dummied down the education. So then we ended up with, because they didn't want the boys being drafted into Vietnam, is what it was. If you got out of high school, if you could get into a college, you got a deferment, and they were trying to keep the boys from having to go to Vietnam. So if you had good grades, you had to go for a few years, and everyone was hoping the war would be over and they wouldn't have to go. Teachers and stuff didn't want to be guilty of flunking some boy and having him go to Vietnam because the war became very unpopular.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
anyway, that went on. So then we ended up with generations of what? Undereducated teachers and a academic system that has bought into this weird teaching way of teaching it's not conducive, it's not age appropriate. Children in elementary school need total stability in a class. They don't need to be second guessing their behavior as is this right or wrong. They shouldn't be taught subjectivity in that kind of a way when they're real young. Okay, I'm not saying you need to beat them up, but it is imperative they're removed from school. I know you don't agree with that because you think some can't do it. I say if you can do it, get them out of there. Take them out. Your kids, you are who's supposed to save your kids. God put you in charge of that. Nobody said it was going to be easy. Nobody said this is going to be easy to bring children up, and the government's going to do it for you. You're going to let the government do it for you? They might go see a doctor. You know, some teacher might give them a ride, and they'll get some body parts cut off. I mean, that is what is going on.
Yeah.
So this is total immorality. So you have people who can't even think to do that. And we have so many laws against anybody trying to do anything. Like if you're homeless, I was telling you or somebody, if you're homeless, you better not sleep in your car because your car is going to get impounded. So you got to sleep outside on the ground if you got a vehicle. Right? So it's really hard to think out of the box. It's hard for people to think out of the box when they can't make enough money. And you have these inflated jobs versus that. And these people with these really inflated paying jobs, like 6-figure incomes, some of them, they don't translate into anything else. If they get fired or they lose that job, they won't get another job like that. They had a whole bunch of stockbrokers in the 80s when the stocks took a big dive. Let's see, 80s, 90s. And they all thought they were riding high and, doing great. They all lost their jobs and they ended up in this one area of town in Southern California, this one area, all these men in their 40s who were unemployable and were acting insane. Like one tried to kick in my daughter's car one day. And the police said, yeah, there's all these stockbrokers and stuff that have to move in with their parents and they're just acting crazy all over town. They didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, You have to go get a different job.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what they have to do. They had to go get a different job.
Such as.
Gas station. Go get a job in a gas station. You think you're too good to work in a gas station? Go get it. Go get that job while you still can have a gas station attendant. And mostly it's pump your own gas now. But I'm talking. I'm just. It's anyway. It's a difference in thinking and stuff. And white people had a great culture, and they had a very different way of thinking.
When they were patriarchy and they stopped it for the last 50
When
years
they were a
and
patriarchy and they thought they had to depend on themselves.
mm,
Yeah, but now what's being taught is a
is that
preference for
patriarchy is another
socialism.
word for
What's
domestic
being taught is
violence.
a preference for socialism under this idea of equity. Okay, this is communist thinking disguised as humanitarian kindness. It's
Because,
communistic thinking.
well, I
And when
suppose
I
maybe,
talk to Europeans, I told you this before. When I talk to Europeans, they're way more open to being socialist than Americans are. But a lot of Americans don't realize is they're really being prone towards socialism now because they don't recognize it. They're not from an era that recognized the other thing because it's slowly been turning into this, and they're causing the uh, the citizenry to fight each other instead of being the instead of the aristocrats and the peons. They made it race because the middle class was so big. They had to
mhm,
find some reason to cause people to separate in the United States, and they picked a race, and and then they're causing instability in countries with this massive immigration of different types of Muslims. Right now, they're using Ukrainians next, whatever. They're trying to cause a massive bunch of discontent and squabbling within countries. You cannot bring in that many single men from a culture that thinks, women can't really be walking around in the streets by themselves, and they think that means she's a certain type of person. You can't bring in that many people to destabilize a culture. And the United States has had different immigrants coming in. They do this all the time. Another group of immigrants come in, and people don't like those immigrants. We have a history of that. But what's going on with bringing in this many Muslims who are oppositional towards white people into Europe is destabilizing the entire area. So no one in Europe, no state, no country in Europe is going to be able to defend itself from this economic takeover, socialism and communism under a world government. This is what they're using. They're using these people to cause instability. They're pawns. They're being used as pawns. So, yeah, white people got to get it together. They got to figure out what they're going to do. These people everybody has a sad story about why they left where they left and came in, but they are being used to cause instability all through Europe and in the United States. It's just not as bad here because we have a bigger population, but you guys have a bigger problem with it.
yeah, because we're all squashed up together and
Well, you're
with
most
things.
squashed, and yeah, and they can just walk. I mean, you can't do it with a boat blowing up coming to America. I mean, you have to get into Mexico or Canada first and then come across the border somehow or something like that. You have to get to some closer country. I mean, it's closer to go into Europe, but they're being manipulated. All this is manipulation the same way they manipulated California was manipulated for electoral votes. This is using people as weapons. They don't even know they're being used like that. People are being brainwashed, all disguised as being humanitarian. This is terrible.
Well, the solution is simple.
French people don't like Muslims. Why do they have to live around them then? I don't go to France. I think they're rude.
Mm.
I'm not forcing myself on the French people, right?
But I think it's a collective Western problem in that Westerners
It's a
don't have a
collective
religion.
Western problem that has been orchestrated, and the World Economic Forum is part of it. Because as long the whole, if Europe and the United States and Australia, if they're all unstable, the people will not unite to fight. And
It
if
must be
enough of
given a
them are,
vision of the future that they'll
that's yeah, that's what you're going to have. That's what you're going to have, because it's to these I don't know what the hell they are. You want to call them globalists, you want to call them what, but it's a class of people that control a lot of assets and money. They're grabbing more assets. They're grabbing more assets,
but
and
by
they're getting,
bribing politicians because they're easy to bribe.
well, they're
When
bribing politicians, but they're grabbing assets. They're removing private
public
ownership of
utilities,
property. They're
yes, but
removing that. Yeah,
it started during Thatcherism. She started it first.
yeah. Well,
And that's got to end because it's obviously against the national interest. So it has to be got back. And this is obviously going to
well,
be
they're not served,
controversial.
but none of these people are serving the people, Claire.
Yes,
They
and
let the,
that's why the narrative of nationalism has to be asserted, and it's a universal message. Nationalism should be defined as government in the national interest. So it can't be about people or a group of people or whatever. It has to be an abstraction because it's a judicious balancing of
yeah, well, you're
our
overthinking
constitution.
it because you have regular people. Okay, this is like, okay, it's overthinking it. And if you're going to give them an idea, you're going to, hey guys, you all should become Muslim. Well, yeah, I mean, most white people don't want to hear that. No white nationalist wants to hear that. Well, but it's not true. There are white nationalists who are Muslim. There
Yes,
are. And if there's a war in Europe, those white nationalists who the white nationalists are disowning and say they're crud and race traitors, those white nationalists will be fighting for the white people. That's what they're not getting out of all this. They will fight with the white people who's trying to
against.
destroy them. Just like if someone enters the United States trying to fight this country, I don't care who they are, I'm going to start shooting at them too. The problem is, how are they doing it? They're doing it in a non-warfare way by allowing open borders and then manipulating people into crashing those borders into these countries. So, I don't know. Should I go down to the border?
No, you should question the entire moral system, and you haven't got one. All you have is you don't even have Washington's advice and warnings into your constitution, so you could at least say, "Oh, he said we shouldn't do this. We better not do
Well,
this."
it's not that kind of a document, Claire, to be.
Well, it is exactly what it is. But I mean, all you have left is the articles of confederation, and they're all just about how state, how the individual state should relate to the federal.
Well, I know you're into. I know you want the different constitution in the United States. I
Well, I
don't.
don't see how it's going to work
I don't
otherwise.
know how it's going to work. I just know that I'm willing to fight for this political
But just
experiment
point
in
out
this
the
country.
problem, which is a simple one. No, okay. Obviously, people don't want to be told they have to have a religion that they don't like. But it's sort of, well, you have to have a religion, don't you? Doesn't everyone need any group of people? They need rules. You join a gym, you need rules about how to behave. A club, a social club. Everything needs rules. Even a gang needs a purpose. Whatever gang, I don't know, cheerleaders, jocks, well, whatever. You have to have an identity and certain rules. So if you don't even think you need that, well,
Well, why do you think the white nationalists are calling the white Muslims traitors?
because
Almost every
they
one of
don't
them has
understand.
married out of their ethnic group, Claire. Almost every single one of them.
Of course, they don't understand that race can't be your religion. You look
No,
at
I'm
the
not talking about them. I'm talking about why they think the white Muslims are all traitors because they want their culture and stuff to rise up again. They're not
No, but
seeing
they don't
people
have a
marrying
culture.
outside of their ethnic group as anything other than a traitor.
I know, but you can't control who your children are going to marry if you don't have parental authority. And it's not just maternal authority, it
But
is,
they're
of
not
course,
thinking it of it
paternal
that way.
authority.
They're not thinking of it in that way.
Yeah, I know it needs to be explained to them. I think they're capable of understanding it. And
While they're sitting on their couches, smoking a bong,
hmm,
watching TV, discussing about how no, they can't marry these women. They don't like them. Nobody wants to obey me. They're not even making themselves worthy of marriage for consideration of
exactly.
marriage. Them, the other ones that are more off the grid and doing their own thing, they're more believable. Those
It's
are
all
people
about
trying to do something,
marriageability. It's all
huh?
about marriageability, isn't it? It's basically, does anybody want to marry you in order for you to produce offspring and produce a next generation?
Well,
That
if you have, yeah, if you have sex this liberal, I mean, this is wow. Ugh. If it's like this, and obviously, if someone's looking at someone for, I don't know how many. Okay, my husband, when he was in school, he had some, you know, friends, Americans that were friends, and when he saw who they got married to, he was surprised.
what do you mean?
He was surprised because it seemed like these guys were always talking about how they had to go after all these really hot looking ladies, and they married sort of
Plain
regular kind of
white.
people. Well, yeah, because when you want to get married, you're thinking about something else than who you're going to date. You have guys now today, young white guys in the United States in their 30s getting vasectomies and they don't even have a girlfriend. All they have are these I don't know what it is. They call it Tinder, not some
Friends with
dating app thing, and they hook up for
yes,
sex with people,
yes,
okay?
yes, that's Tinder.
So it's like, and it's like, okay, if someone goes into a bar or whatever and they get drunk, all of a sudden at closing time, everyone becomes better looking,
Mm.
right? It's kind of a raunchy saying. So, yeah. So you can be dating material or you can be husband and wife material, but there's no need in a lot of these people. They're having trouble figuring out what would even be a good choice. And they're afraid to get married because men are being taken to the cleaners in a divorce now.
Yes, so that's
Job.
why it's so important to make the point that no fault divorce has to be banned, and nobody's interested enough in marriage to even talk about that because
What has to be banned?
no fault divorce.
Oh no, I want no fault divorce.
But
I want a better
I
caliber
know
of
I know
people.
you do, but I mean that's how people get taken to the cleaners.
No, they get taken to the cleaners through the division of marital assets. That's where they get taken to the
Yeah, yeah,
cleaners.
and if there's no fault, you didn't do anything wrong, you just got bored, well, then you're entitled to half,
Well,
really?
if you think you can get some housing, get away from him, get a bunch of freebie stuff, yeah, more and more people are going to break up because it's hard. It's exhausting taking care of children. It's kind of
It
hard
has to be
to, and it
stigmatized.
feels like they're sucking your brain out sometimes, Claire. You're a mom. It's like they're sucking your brain out and all this
Mm.
stuff, and people aren't appreciative of all you do, and you can get into a rut telling yourself this. Then you can look around, and then some of the people have the problem. They have husbands that just can't keep their pants on anyway, and then they want to get away, but so you got a problem going on where these people that women that actually want to do a traditional marriage, okay, then all of a sudden they're out of a marriage, unemployable, and they can't get married again. So I mean,
So
there's some real reality problems here, and it used to be during my dad's generation, if some man was having an affair, very rarely was he going to ruin his family over it.
yeah, he would never leave his wife.
Mm-mm. No, no, no. It was like, okay, he's not going to leave his wife, and then you got the 60s and 70s coming in, and then people thought, hey, we can get divorced now, and I can get the younger Cupid doll, but they used to go get Cupid doll on the side or whatever. I'm not saying this was good. I'm just saying the idea of breaking a family up was seen as so horrible that
but
people
now,
avoided it. Yeah,
yeah.
and but if you're going to give freebies for it, I'm a housewife. I can't stand this anymore. Sitting here anymore with the kids because half the neighborhood's gone. Like half the women are at work. Gone are the days where the whole street, all the moms were at home, right? So you're home and you're doing all that. Yeah, they're sucking your brain. This is going on. Oh God, if I could just get out of here. I just want to get out of here. Hey, they're giving them housing over there, and that housing actually looks better than this apartment we're living in. I'm going to go get that housing.
Mm.
I remember when all this welfare stuff sort of started, the big jokes where people were laughing their heads off. Why? Not because a bunch of women had welfare, because they used to come check at the houses to make sure that the men weren't there. They actually used to come, they actually would come to see if the men were there, and the guys would take off. They weren't broke up at all. Quite a few of them. They actually did it for money.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them, but they were doing it, and it turned into a joke because people knew that was happening, and then they went and changed the law and said, no, you can't go over to people's houses and do that. You can't. Just because they're getting welfare doesn't mean the state can come in unannounced and check out to see if the father of those kids are there or not.
Well, this is all crazy, and it's all got to change. And obviously, a lot of people are going to get their toes stepped on when the changes are made. So, I mean, they're not going to be happy about.
They're not going to get voted in, though, Claire. I'm saying.
No,
So how
that's what I mean.
So
You
how are
thought
you going
about
to get it
voting in.
in if it's not going to
You
get
say
voted in?
well, so all you have to say is, well, it can't be done. Nothing will be fixed under the current system. So forget about voting. And then I'll go,
No,
oh,
I'm not.
whoa.
I'm not forgetting about voting
Okay, but
because
it's all going to
for
work.
me, there has to be a legal way to go against government that does not involve war or open
Wow.
rebellion. There has to be legal, even though it's not being practiced fully right now. It has to be on the books and legal. Because
Well,
once you've done that, all you're doing is handing it to them. You're handing them the ability to become more tyrannical than what's going on right now. That's the problem with it, because it's gone tyrannical now. So
but you
if
have
if
to go right to the real problem, which is that voting is the wrong system to
then how are you
begin
going to
with.
get it in if you're not going to vote in this new government? Do you see what I'm saying? You're saying we got to get rid of voting, but there's no way to get in a new government without war if you're using voting.
Okay, I mean, the worst case scenario there is a civil war, but at least talk about the actual problem instead of pretending that it's going to be solved by more voting. You've already admitted that the problem is so bad, no
There's
democratic
fraud. It's
competition.
fraud. There's voting fraud going on. There's manipulating of populations in this country going on already. State of California is an example of that. I mean, I explained that all to you, how that state was the first one. It had the most electoral votes of all states.
Mm-hmm.
And they purposely ran business out and brought in people by offering such great freebies that people were having a hard economic time were coming to this state. Right? And so now they're voting. They're not going to vote their freebies away. So it's already this population, it's moving populations like this is what's going on in manipulating. And that's what's going on with these immigrants, these Muslim immigrants coming in. They're bringing in all these guys without their wives and women. These all young guys of fighting age in. What do they think they're going to do? Be a bunch of celibate priests? No. This is all causing instability. It would be cheaper if they were sitting around in Jordan or Saudi and people were sending money over for them. They shouldn't be housed in Europe and the United States. If things are so bad and they're running from war, they should be housed in a Muslim country, and the other countries could give money And it costs way less than what's going on right now. Way less. I'm not saying this because I hate brown people. I don't hate brown people. My husband is considered some kind of in between brown and white people. Okay. Whatever. He's kind of a, some people might say, well, yeah, he's kind of white, he's sort of a in betweeny, I guess. My own husband, because most converts end up marrying out of their ethnicity, and his heritage is not from Europe. Okay, his heritage is not from Europe. So he's not a descendant of Europe. He doesn't have an attachment to that heritage. There was somebody on the Twitter, I don't know if you noticed, you talked to him, I don't want to say his name here, but he was applauding something bad that happened to the United States. Oh yeah, they deserve that. This is not the behavior of someone who's loyal to the people of the country they live in. That's someone who has loyalty somewhere else. I am not happy to see something bad happen to the United States, even if what the United States did was wrong. I want a moral government, and I want the United States to quit injecting itself into not just Muslim countries, most of these countries. I want them out of most of these countries. The United States, I want them out because I don't believe this is moral behavior, what the U.S. government is doing, but it is ridiculous to think that the government is anywhere near representing the people in this country anymore, because it is a vassal state now. Nobody wants to believe that when I say it, but it is. The United States itself is a vassal state, and it's being propped up like it's not. There was a time when the United States was not a vassal state. It is now. And all of Europe is. All of Europe.
So the vassalage needs to be thrown off.
That's right.
And so talking about the problem realistically,
try to talk about
we'll begin.
Everybody tries to talk about
some.
Everyone tries to talk about some aspect of it.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah. No, I'm saying fundamentally,
what's happened is
America doesn't have an official religion.
Well, no, they're using populations to fight each other, and this stuff. They need white Muslims to stand up and say this is wrong. They need this.
People of principle to.
Yes, but what it's turned into is you have a bunch of white Muslims who are LARPing around as foreigners in their own country. This makes no sense. I'm way more radical in my views than Brother Robert DeForest, or at least what I see. I don't know what he thinks in private. I don't know him like that. I don't know what William Briones thinks in private, Brother William Briones. I don't know how they think in private exactly. But the idea that the Muslims are hating people over race, hating people because of their race is incorrect. But to be this stupid and not realize what's happening, that doesn't make me a racist to see what's happening. And it doesn't make me a racist to tell white people, you guys need to start marrying each other. Maybe start marrying a little bit younger.
They're not going to do they're not going to change their behavior.
Nobody's going to change anything, Quran. I mean, Claire, almost nobody's going to become a secular Quranist. Almost nobody is. All right.
I know.
And I won't even go. I won't even throw away all the sacred cows, like you say. I won't even myself. I'm not throwing away the idea of the republic yet. If this republic goes under, as far as I'm concerned, then the country's done.
I'm not proposing anything but a republic.
Single party state is the end of the republic.
It's still a republic.
The single party state will be end of any chance for this republic to survive. It will not survive under socialism or communism or fascism or any of these things. It will not survive to be the type of country it was during my father's time that was improving, that was going up. Do you understand?
Well, it can only improve if most people get married and have children, legitimate children.
Well,
and,
that
and
and
that might
yeah,
just
they have to
remain.
do that, but it's other problems too. I mean, it won't just having kids isn't going to put an end to this what's turning into a bigger race problem than what was going on in the 60s.
I
I
mean,
mean, I
the race
remember those
problem is a
marches.
law and order problem, isn't it?
No, it's not a law and order problem. It's politicians and they're moving populations and they're causing uh they're causing they're using race as a way to cause instability in the United States and in
Yes,
Europe.
because it means an additional thing that you can't say and get into trouble for saying, and then they can silence
They
you.
created a race problem that was improving. Race problems have steadily improved in the United States since since the civil rights movement. They was improving over time. There was a real reason the Black Panthers had to create themselves. But it was improving. It was improving. It was improving. A lot more people were intermarrying now. Okay, white nationalists don't see this as good, and I don't particularly do either. But it's not. It's certainly not haram in Islam, right? I mean, God didn't make people so that they would all hate each other and sit in a corner. But this pushing the big monoculture on the entire world is not something Islam ever encouraged during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It did not promote that. It
Well,
said
isn't
no,
Sharia monoculture?
no, it's not monoculture, Claire. The Sharia would go into different areas. It would develop within those areas in its own way sometimes.
Yes, so different countries could interpret the verses in a
Well,
different
you have
way.
schools of thought. They have schools of thought, and some of them, like Hanafi school, is more flexible in a different country. It takes more into consideration of local tradition and the culture that was there. I mean, they're all a little bit different, but you can't bring in a bunch of foreign people into the United States and interpret Islam like this and have everyone LARPing around like a foreigner. It's insane. And the white people who are becoming Muslim don't have anywhere to go unless they go there. Before the oil boycott in the United States, the Saudi oil boycott, most white people who became Muslim did so through Sufi orders. Most of them did not wear hijab. You would have no way of knowing that they were Muslim if they didn't tell you.
Hmm.
Did you see?
Hmm.
But after the oil boycott, all of a sudden these mosques start. I'm talking about on the West Coast now. They started popping up, and a lot of it I think was due to a massive amount of students coming from overseas. And a lot of Pakistanis came. All these people came, and a lot of them stayed. And this sort of thing. The Muslims in the United States were traditionally a little bit more on the East Coast and in Detroit and Michigan. A whole lot did come to the United States to work in the automobile industry several
Hmm.
generations back. A massive amount of Lebanese came. The biggest mosque in the United States with the largest number of people that attend it, weekly attendance kind of thing,
Hmm.
is in Dearborn, Michigan.
Hmm.
And it's been there for a century. It's been there a long time, and it was started by Lebanese.
Hmm.
I went on Hajj. When I went on Hajj, a bunch of those people went on Hajj when I went. It was kind of interesting. They had so many Lebanese there, and Christian Lebanese, not just Muslim Lebanese. Christian. I mean, they didn't go on Hajj, Christian Lebanese, but that's been there for generations. But the West Coast of the stuff, no, this got big, big. At that, I mean, Arab Saudi oil boycott. But before that, they were in Sufi orders. The white people. People thought there were no white Muslims in the United States, where there was.
Hmm.
They just didn't walk around in a scarf. They didn't cover their hair up, or they did when they went over to the Sufi gatherings or whatever. They'd put something on their head most of the time, but they didn't walk around dressed like that all the time. No, they went to work. The 60s, the hippies is what brought in the ability for people to start dressing weird in public. Before then, everybody dressed just like their mother did, right?
Hmm.
That's when they started marketing clothes for just younger people. I mean, you can see the old pictures in England and stuff. The girls were dressed just like their moms.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, there was a kind of dress that, yeah.
But there are white Muslims in the United States, and they are here. And they're not as visible, and they're not all in the same places. Many times, back before I had a car, many times I took the public bus, and a white lady would say, "Oh, you're Muslim?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "I am too."
Huh.
This was very common. A lot,
Mm.
because I used to take the bus. I didn't have a car.
Mhm.
People come up and say that to me. I have one lady, I went back to my hometown one time. She came up to she goes, "Oh, are you a Muslim?" She goes, "I'm a Sufi." She wasn't even saying Sufi right. She was saying Sufi.
Oh.
But they are white Muslims in the United States. They're either invisible or they're LARPing around acting like foreigners, or there's something a little bit more in between, which I guess if you want to say the hijab is LARPing as a foreigner, I look like that. I do not behave as a foreigner in my own country. I don't do that. I
Mhm.
cover my hair,
Mhm.
but I am not LARPing as a foreigner. I don't pretend to be one. I wear American clothing. I did go through a stage where I wore the niqab and those black abayas and stuff. And
Mhm.
then one day I said, "The hell with this. I'm not doing this anymore." And that was very early on. And it
Mhm.
was convenient when you had little kids to dress like that because you could breastfeed in public easy, Because when you
Mhm.
have kids, small kids, you're basically a human spit up rag, right? When you take care of your kids, you feed
Yeah.
them and you burp them and then they puke on you, right?
Yes.
Right. So it's like that. But there are white Muslims in the United States. They need to become more visible. People need to hear them speak.
Secular Quranism.
Yeah, it's a
I
good
think.
idea.
It would be fun if somebody else said, "Oh, I do agree with the one-party state," or something of that
Well, I'm
nature.
not going to be that one, Claire. You're not going
Okay,
to get
I
me.
know, but I think it sort of needs. Well, you're the caliph.
It
You're the
makes a
caliph.
shock appeal, but I don't think people think it out all the way. And I guarantee you, in the United States, it would lead to a socialist government. And
Well,
then it would be communist and then fascist because people in society itself right now are acting kind of fascist.
you
They're
mean
giving up their right for free speech. They're turning people in. People are losing their jobs over a Twitter post. That's what's going on in the United States right now. And this is that's
yeah,
not
and
free
I know
speech.
people don't seem to be caring about their First Amendment rights.
Well, you had 3 generations that have not been taught anything.
But you would have thought there might be a few lawyers or people like that who want to
That
defend
are
that.
woke, that are going to a woke educational college. They have taken over every aspect of academia now.
Well, then we'll have to question academia.
Well, you could question them all you
Well,
want, Claire, but people
everything
don't
needs
give
to
up
be
the power they
questioned.
have. You have to take it away from them. And the only way to take them away from them is to start doing it is collectively pulling kids out of school, and that's going to ruin their funding. They don't care about people coming down and screaming at the school board. If they have your kid the next day, they won. They won. They won.
Mhm.
What we're running into now is that people don't remember how to act like white people, what white people used to act like.
They've lost their identity because well,
They
as you
don't
say,
know. They don't know. They're watching, playing on tablets. They're watching TV. They don't know because they're not around it. Now, not everybody in this country acts like that, but it is a problem in the urban areas. Big fat problem in urban areas. This kind of thinking taking over. Rural people aren't like that, but drugs is almost everywhere in this country.
well, that needs to stop.
Well,
And the
Trump tried to
Quran.
close the border. He tried to close that border off.
But I mean, the Quran is arguably nationalist too, because it
It
believes in
is.
tribes and nations.
It is. It is. You can be interpreted that way. It can be interpreted that way. So the white nationalists, of course, are saying, well, we don't want a civic nationalism. We want just a white nationalism. Well, that party has gone out the door. Okay? White people are not going to be the majority in 15 or 20 years in the United States. That has gone out the door. Okay? But they can try to preserve themselves as best as they can. And, they should marry each other because they're not having enough kids. They're not. They should marry each other and have more kids. The white Muslims should do the same things because it would do wonders for dawah, right? Because right now, the white Muslims have put themselves in a position that they're useless for anything.
Mm.
You see, they can't do dawah like this. Or I'm going to teach you about Islam. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to dress up like a Pakistani in a shalwar kameez. Okay, the hippie days are kind of over. These yuppies and these other people, they don't really want to dress like that. It was in style during the hippie era to wear ethnic costumes from everywhere. I knew a girl that wore a Yugoslav folk dancing costume. She wore it to school one day. That's how people used to be, but that total kind of hippie thing's not in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a big problem. It's a big problem. Secular Quranism, the skeleton idea is great. People need to promote it. I can't promote the single party state. I do not want this country to become a socialist or communist country. I love this country. I love the people who live here. I would like troublemakers to leave. And anybody who's a citizen, we have all the different races are citizens. You can't start throwing citizens out. But this letting people crash across the border down here is insane. They're coming across all over, not just Muslims, people from South America. And these drugs, fentanyl is destroying California too, because these drugs are not being blocked. Because, that's not nice. We need open borders. No, we do not need open borders. See? So I don't know. Anything anyone in government tries to do for this, because it's all been reframed as racism instead of normal nationalist ideas that any country would have had before. It's all destroying everything. Black Lives Matter, Patrisse Cullors admits on video that she's a trained Marxist. And what she do? She rips off all that money and moves into a white neighborhood in a big house. And Candace Owens goes over there and films her. I mean, this is it's just unbelievable. The whole thing's unbelievable. I cannot believe people are this stupid. But why wouldn't they be? They were taught nothing about pride of our government for 3 generations. They were not taught that. They were not taught about the possibilities. They were not shown history saying we used to be like this, then we progressed to be like this, then we even progressed even more and became like this. They're not told history in that way. They're just basically told daily how the white man's no good. I saw a thing on the computer one day, opened it up, and it comes across the screen. It was all about bad people in history. So I looked at it, and Jefferson was one of them. Thomas Jefferson, because he's a bad man because he used to have slaves. Well, the whole world used to have slaves. Black people used to have slaves in Africa. Everybody had slaves. They don't look at the point that Jefferson actually tried to end slavery a couple of times in Virginia, but he couldn't get the idea to pass. He actually wanted to end slavery altogether, but he didn't particularly want to live in the same social society as black people, and he wanted them at a certain age to be sent home or go somewhere else. He wanted them all freed. But nobody talks about that he thought ahead of his time. We have a great history over here, and it's been trashed by a bunch of traitorous academics, a traitorous government, and people who don't know any of this stuff because their textbooks are so dummied down in school. Morality, and that this is how it's supposed to be. And what do you think this should be like? This goes on for hours in school. I always go on a rant when I talk to you, Claire, and I don't mean to do that. I'm going to hang up. I don't know how you hang up, but I'm going to split this scene.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I mean,
no. I think
really
it's a rant. I don't think anyone's even going to listen to this because I'm talking too much on it. I'm very passionate about all this.
Yeah, and I'm saying we just kind of.
But white nationalists, if they want to promote their idea, they're going to have to come up with a more appealing narrative than what they have.
They won't even argue. I mean, that is a problem. They won't even argue. Do you follow Norvin Hobbs?
No, I don't. I mean, I look, I got a guy that lives behind me. All right, they're obviously. I think they're white supremacists. I don't know. I didn't ask them. They got like the flag up there, the F Biden flag.
Yes.
Huge one. And then they have the, the star with the kind of a circle thing around it. It sort of looks like a pentagram. It looks a little bit different. That's a white power symbol, flag flying. And then they have the raven, the raven that white nationalists like flying. Right. So I went up there one day talking to them. They had a whole garage full of Harleys and all this kind of stuff. You know what? I bet he's a great neighbor because I think if somebody tries to break into my house and he sees it, he'll come out with a gun. Mm-hmm. I think that's okay for a neighbor. Mm-hmm. He's not bothering anybody. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's okay. I don't think because people don't like someone, as long as they're not bothering people or keeping them from gainful employment or whatever, if they want to be that racially exclusive, go ahead. You know what I mean? I know plenty of black people want nothing to do with white people. Mm-hmm. I've had black Muslim friends with that when they were looking for husbands back when I was younger that told me they would under no circumstances marry a white man. Mm-hmm. They were only going to marry a black person. They just could not bring themselves to that idea. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to argue with them about it.
And they were okay with you being Muslim and all?
Who?
These white nationalists that you're talking about.
No, white Muslim. I'm talking about black American Muslims. Quite a few of them will not marry out of their ethnicity either.
Right.
And the white nationalists think I'm weird. If I'm running into one and I talk to one, mm-hmm. They get a little bit shocked maybe. But, people don't walk around saying, hey, I'm a white nationalist. Out of my way, you brown person. I mean, most people don't act like that.
No.
And most of them are not actually racial supremacists. Racial supremacy is against Islam. This idea that...
I mean, you could define white nationalism as white people who don't want to become a minority in their own country. If that's white nationalism.
You could say it's white people promoting their culture and way of life and preserving their DNA. You could see it that way too. I mean, there's white nationalists, there's ethno-nationalists, there's white supremacists.
There's no white person actually saying, "Hey, I'm a white supremacist." So they'll be saying,
"Oh, sure there are. Yeah, we have the Klan in the United States. We have the Klan here in the U.S. They are white supremacists.
I didn't know they made political statements of this nature anymore.
Well, they used to kill black people, Claire. Do you know why they got into trouble? They started killing white people. The Klan was quite huge in the United States at one time.
Why did they kill white people?
Oh, they got mad. I don't know. They got mad at some white people. They decided they got too big for their britches because back then people didn't care so much about these lynchings of the black people down south. But when they started going after white people, it turned into a little bit more messy.
Right.
That's when people started thinking.
Why were they killing white people?
Politics.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Politics. The FBI and this stuff, when they went down into the South, I think quite a few of those guys were Jews
What
that went
in
down. Yeah, yeah. Reform
the
Judaism.
victims were Jews? You saying
No, 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 no. That went down with the FBI to try to break the Klan. They wanted to break the Klan. They started some sort of trying to entrap the Klan members and stuff. Because what
Mhm,
happened was a lot of the force were also in the Klan. Okay, so you
mhm,
had law enforcement was also Klan members
mhm,
down south.
mhm,
See, but I'm not saying not everyone down south was in the Klan, but I do remember years ago, um, a guy from Kentucky. He wasn't from Kentucky; he was in Kentucky, and he told me the Klan was a charity organization.
a what?
Charity organization.
Oh,
Okay,
what
so
legally was a charity.
no, he was saying that's what they were. They were mostly concerned with good works, and it was a charity organization.
Mhm.
Nobody believed him.
Makes them sound like the Masons.
Something like that. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, that was his story about that. But there's nothing wrong with caring about who you think is your should be your family.
Well,
Nothing
I
wrong with
guess
that.
the whole thing started with what the freeing of the slaves, and there were these white people afraid of all these sort of roaming gangs of black ex-slaves.
There were
And,
they weren't roaming gangs of black people. Claire, the black neighborhoods used to be you know when they had their they had their own neighborhoods or whatever, you know, after they got freedom and then became homeowners and they all lived in neighborhoods and apartments or whatever, they used to not even have to lock their doors. They were so conservative.
mhm,
They were social conservative black people. The majority of them went to church,
mhm,
and they were very conservative in their family life.
mhm.
And it all changed
With
with
the swinging sixties and
drugs being brought in.
mhm,
Drugs were sold first in black neighborhoods.
yeah.
And, this broke apart. And then, you had the civil rights and civil rights. You needed that. We needed that. Um,
But
we needed
it
civil
was
rights.
really saying it's okay to be a single mother that kind of started the whole
This
thing.
all started when they came out with birth control for the most part. That's when white people started running around having sex with other people like that. I guess people used to fool around some, but they wouldn't actually try to have kids.
Yeah.
The black community, they had kids out of wedlock and stuff. Like when my sister was in college, the black community couldn't believe that these girls that got pregnant were giving their kids away, right? Because they kept theirs in their community. They kept their kids. And I
Mhm,
remember in high school, there was a girl that showed up and she was obviously pregnant sitting in one
mhm.
of our classes. I mean, that was pretty wild back then. And she'd come
Shouldn't
from
be
another town.
allowed.
Huh?
It should be expelled.
She wasn't from there. She
Mm-mm,
came there to have a kid and they were going to give it away for adoption.
mm,
They were not going to keep the baby. So she went for the last months where it showed.
yeah.
They actually rented a house down the street from us and she went to a school full of strangers. It was before the internet, so nobody could out her out on Twitter or something weird.
Mhm,
And she finished school, managed to get her high school diploma, but her baby, they were giving it up for adoption. They were not keeping it. But the black community was keeping their kids
mm.
when they had them like that. Anyway, these things go back and forth or whatever. But I say I myself I tend to lean towards white nationalism in a lot of ways, but I don't have this hatred of this this hatred. I don't think it's productive.
Well,
And
it
their
just
narrative is,
makes you, look bad. I mean, you
huh?
know,
I
expressing
consider you an
hatred
honorary
is
white person. You're an honorary white person. That's fine. I've had black friends and I really like them.
mhm,
Okay, so that's not this. I think it's mostly about culture
culture and
and
outlook and
heritage.
standards and principles.
Yeah. It's terrible to see this decay. It's awful
I think
seeing
it
what
can be
happened.
easily fixed, and it can be done by, well, okay, the rest of the West pointing their fingers at America and saying, "Hey, you guys you haven't got an official religion." That's a problem. That really is a problem. And it's not like you can say, "Oh, but we
But
do."
Europe had one, Claire.
Yeah, but they don't believe in it,
Okay,
and
that's
it can
right.
be put to you that
That's right. They don't believe in it.
they don't believe in it, and you
And the people
started
here
all
don't
this stuff
either.
about not believing in it with your First Amendment. You started the rot of people
They
not
started
believing.
worshiping science. You know, what became the new god was science. And
Well, it's a category error anyway. It's not like scientists ever said, "Oh, we can detect God or the non-existence of God on our scientific instruments." I mean, you just they never claimed that, and if you want
no,
to
I'm
believe in
saying
God,
science.
you can make the inference that.
I'm saying is we have generations now that believe only in what they can materially see. The whole thing, you know, fairies, leprechauns, God, angels, they're all seen as
Oxygen,
myths, as in made
nitrogen.
up stories.
Yes,
It's seen as backwards and something uneducated people do, and that's because that's how it was spread through the media, that this is backward thinking.
well,
I
okay.
could see, look, I became Muslim. I could see back then things weren't going right in this society. Okay. I could see that. This is very when I converted, that was pretty weird. Some white woman converted to Islam like that. I
Mhm,
mean, I should have gone through a Sufi order or something. I didn't know anything about a Sufi order then, but it was pretty weird.
mhm,
But it was coming out of the hippie stuff also had been going on, and so looking weird in public wasn't that weird except for the scarf. Yeah, do you understand? Like
mhm,
wearing long flowy clothes or something, or
mhm,
these hippie looking clothes, you know. I didn't have to change my clothes much after I became Muslim. I just bought a jacket.
mhm,
Put a jacket. I wore long skirts. I used to wear boots, long skirts to my ankles all the time, you know.
mhm,
That kind of stuff. I didn't dress like I was working in an office. I was relatively young, and
mhm.
but if that era hadn't happened, then I just would have been a Muslim, dressed like people in the 1950s, right? But that era is what opened the door for people thinking that, oh yeah, maybe it's okay. I can do this. I can go be this other. People explored religion. It was part. I am a product of my time.
Mhm,
People explored religion. They talked about that kind of stuff. You're at lunch talking to your friends about that kind of stuff instead of uh, the Gucci bag or whatever it is they talk about now. Or,
mm,
hey, I feel like I should have been a man. What do you think? Well, you wouldn't feel that way if you maybe went on a diet, but you really got too fat. No boy's going to like you because you got too fat. I mean, the conversation's not, it's not productive. People talked about kids were talking about this sort of thing when I was growing up. Was
right.
talking about this and that, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal when I became Muslim. But it became a bigger deal as time went on.
Mhm.
So,
With
yeah.
9/11 and all that.
Well, I became Muslim quite a while back. I mean, I'm not talking about just 9/11. 9/11, actually, because of 9/11, there were quite a few people who converted because of that. That made them look into Islam, and they actually became Muslim because of 9/11. Looking into Islam, sometimes like the oil boycott, people started reading about Islam when that oil boycott happened. So then you have Muslims that were trying to learn about Islam, but they went to masjids instead of through Sufi orders, right?
Mm,
And then you have Black Americans that were Muslims, you know, the nation and all them.
mm.
I don't know.
But surely, okay, you can say China hasn't got an official religion, but actually, it calls its moral system socialism with Chinese characteristics. So it's taken the trouble to actually give it a name and have books about it. And unfortunately, the same
I
cannot be
don't
said of
I
the
don't
West.
want community control, Claire.
Well, then how are you going to
I'm
get
too
anything
American to buy
done?
into that. I will don't want community control over me. And that's what
But that's what
socialism
law is
brings in.
about.
It brings it in. A single party state turns into community control, then it turns into no representation, and then it turns into a dictatorship. That's the progression going there. And I want to avoid this progression. I told you I like a lot of the secular Quran ideas. I don't agree with some of them, a couple other things, but just the skeleton idea, I like it. I don't know how to get it into this republic in a way that preserves the republic, because this country
It will
just
still
will
be a
not.
republic.
No, it
China's a
won't. No, it
republic.
won't, Claire. It will not
It's a republic. Russia's a
be socialist.
republic.
Huh? It will not stay a republic
It's
once
not
it
going to
goes into
become a
socialism.
kingdom.
Hmm?
It's not going to become a kingdom.
It's going to become a dictatorship, because
Well, you can't. Okay, you
right
can have a
now,
dictatorship that's still a
huh?
republic. I mean, the only difference between a.
I don't want a dictatorship, Claire.
Okay, but
But I'm American, Claire.
the Romans
Convince me. You
actually
can't
elected
convince me.
dictators
I
for national emergencies, don't you?
Okay, martial law is a different issue. If the government wants to call martial law for something that's really important,
Yeah, but
then
you
that would be okay if we have moral people in government. What they did over COVID here was crazy. Shut the country down for a couple of years. And then that 2 years is when they brought in this really transgender nonsense program into the schools, and nobody saw it. And all of a sudden, people went back to school, and it was like, what is going on now? That was all worked on and moved in while everybody was on lockdown to that extreme version. It will not work in this country. It might work somewhere else, but not in the United States. It'll just become a socialist country. I don't want to be socialist, Claire. I don't want the future generations to be socialist or communist or fascist. I want freedom of thought and freedom of speech to stay. And right now, we're losing it.
Yeah, but if you don't restore the patriarchy, then all the problems.
Yeah, but we're not going to restore the patriarchy in the United States with a single party nation, because even though on paper it might look like that happened, it will go socialist. It's gone. They waited too long. They waited too long to try to do something like that over here. It'll be
Sorry,
socialist.
who waited too long to do what?
They waited too long. They waited too long with this idea. Okay, we can have a single party state that will work out. It waited too long. If that was possible, at the time of Washington, let's say that was all possible. They waited too long. Right now, I guarantee you, it will fall into socialism. That's just
Obviously,
what will
it's not
happen in this
going to
country.
happen under the current regime. That would have to be. There would
I
have
know
to be
we
a
have to think of
convergence.
something better, Claire. There has to be a better thought. Somehow there has to be a way to get social conservatism in, and maybe Islamic laws itself and that sort of thing, without being a single party country.
Well, people will say, "Well, how are you going to get it done? We're never going to
I
vote."
don't know, but the only
Well,
way you're talking about is talking about a civil war. I'm not promoting a civil war. And if
it
I
would
was
be a
in a
culture
civil
war.
war, I would be against any idea of a single party state.
It would be a culture war, and a culture war is a very old idea,
Oh,
isn't it?
culture war is just all dissolving. As long as academia is doing what it's doing, as long as what's going on in the schools, you're going to have future brainwashed generations
Yes. So
more and more.
really, the culture war, as I see it, would have to take place on the airwaves. It would have to be broadcast, all these debates. And
Oh, well, I don't know about, yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, media has to be used in some way. Yeah, sure.
and we
Yeah.
have to put it
Yeah,
in a
but I'm not
format
going to
that,
promote a single party state for the United States.
well, you participate in a debate, like,
I
is
would
single
talk about anything, but not a
right.
single party state. I just
Oh,
will not even
you
entertain.
refuse to discuss it.
I refuse to even try to talk people into it as a talking point or something. I'm very plain. I am against that.
Oh, all right, but if there was some American Muslim who thought, well, I'm prepared to support it, you'd have to engage with him or her, wouldn't you?
Well, I talk to people, but I'm just a housewife, Claire. I mean, there's other people way better for debates than me. I'm just a housewife talking
Well,
about different
we
things. I
can't
don't even
even
have a
find
college
these
degree.
people. We can't even find these people, can we? They're just nowhere. They won't
They have
have a
been
proper debate.
brainwashed into being non-political, Claire. They've been brainwashed into standing up for nothing and being non-political.
Yeah, and that's a problem, because if you won't even
Yeah.
defend a principle because you don't know what it is, if you don't have one, then the thing will get worse because
Yeah. So the let's all go hate the Jews is a pretty bad narrative. I mean, it's just okay. This has gone
that's
on
what
for
they
how
do.
long? It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. Think of a new routine, right?
That's entertaining.
Nationalists out there, think of a new narrative and a new routine. Okay, the banking system, yes, it was created and set up by Jews and secular Jews. You can't get away from that. It was, and it still is controlled by them, Claire. You want to act like it's not true? It's true. Okay, what are they going to do about
And
it?
so you have to break you have to ban usury, right? If you don't like the banking system, the only solution is to ban usury.
Yeah, they
And
should
so you have
get
to
rid of
say all these
usury.
things.
I'm all for that.
Well, how are you going to do that? You can't do that through elections. So if you say,
Okay, Claire, but if you're saying we're gonna what you're advocating, okay, first of all, it'll lead to socialism and communism. I'm telling you right now, this single party state idea, if it happens in the
China's
United
doing
States,
all
let me
right.
finish.
China's doing
Let
all
me
right.
finish. It will turn into that. Okay? In the United States. I can't talk about everywhere else. But I know the United States and Americans, and that's what it'd end up becoming. But your idea, there's no way to implement your idea in a country where the people will not vote for it unless they go to war. And I'm not advocating my country end up in a war, a civil war with its own citizens. So, how do you propose to get your idea into
I've
the
always
government
said
without voting?
we take it to the top. So
The
that there's
top,
always,
the
yes.
top that are participants in a vassal state. It doesn't happen. The law doesn't work like that here.
All right. Well, I mean, you want it from the bottom. The
No,
people at
I
the
no no.
bottom are
I'm saying
easily
is
marginalized.
Claire, what I'm saying is on the one hand, you're saying, look what voting gets you, you can't vote. And on the other hand, you have a proposal that either will be brought in through voting or through war.
Well, you have to explore all options. So what?
What's
All
the
you have
other
to say,
option? What would
all
the
you have to
option
say
be?
is say this is what is necessary, and then people can decide how they want to
Yeah, well, I can't
push it
say this is
through.
necessary a single party state because I don't want a socialist country.
Yeah, but sometimes we have competing goals. Like we want to keep our job, but we want to be rude to
I
our
don't have a
boss.
job.
This is an example, that we, maybe want to give up gambling, but we can't resist going to the casino. We want to give up drink, but we can't resist having another drink. It's all these things. They are compete. Sometimes our own goals are in conflict with each other, and that
Claire,
is a cause of neurosis.
what does going to a casino? How does that compare with the idea of a political system of a single party state in the United States?
You want to
Going to a
solve
bar is not going to create a socialist country. A single party state will in the United States.
A socialist
Absolutely.
country.
It's
Okay.
handing it to them.
What's the
It's
word
saying
saying
no
about a
resistance. You
socialist
guys
country?
can have it now. That's what it's doing. But the question I'm asking you is, let's say I buy the idea. Let's say all of a sudden Carol buys the idea of a single party state, and you say, oh, good. Carol finally Binding on the bandwagon, right? She's on the
Mm-hmm.
bandwagon for that. How do you realistically think it would get in if not by voting, right? Because you're saying you're promoting no more voting, but you want a vote to vote it in? No, you're saying
No,
no
no, no,
voting.
no, 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 no. You just talk about the idea and you paint a picture of how things are going to be. I mean, okay, all I'm working
No, no,
on
no, no,
is
no.
is,
You're
a,
not
is
answering my question,
theory.
Claire.
In theory, it would
No, no,
work
no.
because I
You're
can't
not
see how
answering
else it
my
would.
question. You're not answering the
Okay,
question
I'll
I'm
ask it
asking you.
again. Ask it again.
Okay. Okay. Let me think of a different way to phrase it. Okay. I got an idea. Okay. I got this idea and I want the government to switch over to this idea.
Mm-hmm. So talk to the government.
And let me finish. And it's a republic and there's going to be a vote. Most of the people are going to vote no. Okay, listen, most are going to vote no. Okay, so how do you think this would get in if they're all voting no on this? But you're already
You
saying you
would
don't want.
need
Listen.
you need a media
You're
campaign.
saying, Claire, listen to what how your logic runs. There's going to be no voting. We're not going to have voting, but we have to have a vote to get this in.
But I don't even say that. You're putting words in my mouth.
No, yes, I do.
I
You
am
don't say.
saying you put it to everybody that this voting thing is a problem, and you refer to George Washington's farewell speech warning against political
Okay,
parties.
Claire.
You go through the list of
No,
things that's excessive
no, you're not
administration. They're
listening.
completely ignored.
You're talking about how I present the idea to people. I'm
Yeah.
talking about something else. I'm
Well,
talking about in reality. You're
I'm,
promoting, listen, you're promoting no voting.
yes.
Listen, you're promoting no voting.
Yes,
But
and the idea.
you're cutting me off, Claire. You're cutting me off. You're promoting no voting in a
Yes,
country that votes. We
yes.
vote.
Well,
So to get
whose
this change,
elections get
listen,
stolen?
Claire, listen to what I'm saying. To get this change into to be a single party state that does this, there would have to be a vote or there would have to be a war.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
If
so
you
what's in between,
okay,
Claire?
so I was going to explain to you how it's going to be done, which is I'm not saying it's guaranteed. I'm saying the only way to get it done peacefully is through a media campaign. You explain through
No,
the
that's talking
media.
about changing people's minds.
Yes, so
Even with a
obviously you have to
media
change people's
campaign,
minds.
Claire, even with a media campaign, it would end up that there would have to be an election to vote it in or out.
All
And if
right.
that election fails, the
So,
only
so,
way to
so
get
what
it
you have to
in,
say to the parties is, well, it'll have to be a referendum, right? It'll have to be a
well, that's a
referendum because,
vote. That's a vote. So
oh,
you
all
want
right,
people who
okay,
believe
okay,
in
okay,
voting,
a referendum,
they believe in voting,
which is
and
a
then
different kind of vote, right? To voting for political parties. So, so at least
they don't
it
vote for
has.
political parties, Claire. You just go join one. There's no vote for a political party. Okay. But I'm talking about I'm talking about something that's probably a simpler question than what you're turning it into. If people vote, are given free choice, they're going to vote in your idea or they're going to vote it out. Right now, if we go, they're not going to vote. So your idea is a campaign to convince people this is good. Now you've convinced everybody they shouldn't vote, and now we're going to have a vote to put it in or not. You see what I'm saying? In Iran, when they had they had a vote whether or not to have an Islamic government, and the Islamic government won the election, right? The people still can vote there, but they're voting under an Islamic government. What your proposal is pretty much giving up the vote. So you're going to give up the vote? People are going to give that up. People are going to give up voting by voting on giving up voting.
Okay, so your question is, what if things go wrong? What can we do about it?
No, that's not what my question was. My question is, there's a little break in logic here, because you're saying we're going to give up voting, and now everybody, let's have a vote on giving up voting. In other words, you're telling people to do exactly what you told you.
No, there is no contradiction, because I am saying you have to talk about the thing, and then you let things take their course. So somebody,
yeah, but I cannot promote. Yeah, right. I cannot.
Okay, you don't have to promote it. I'm just saying.
You don't, yeah, but you don't understand what I'm saying.
There's bound to be somebody.
I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, let's vote for a single party state and you guys give up your vote. And then that way, when the socialists and the communists, you're handing them the country on a silver platter and you're living like that, tough tooties. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say it as I see it.
Of course, but right. Obviously there will be somebody who will agree with me. I'm assuming that not all Americans think that voting is the answer.
Well, probably not, but it won't be. Those people will not be people who have bought into the heritage of the founding fathers, because no matter what you say about those founding fathers, they were not against voting.
Okay. Well, they were against political parties, so
they were against. They were against the federation breaking up into 4 parties.
Okay, well, that's obviously wrong. Then it's wrong. It's silly to have 4 parties.
We have 4 distinct cultures.
You have direct democracy, or a form of shareholder voting, where people just voted for or against a proposal, not people to represent them who can't be relied on, who are corrupt. And ultimately,
how do you think
what matters is
vote,
that
Claire?
You get good government. Because, if the people who govern you can be trusted, you don't need to be voting all the time. You can trust them to look after things. But if you can't trust them, you can vote as much as you like.
No, Claire, I'm not going to trust a bunch of people, a bunch of immoral people to do the right thing. No.
I'm not asking you to do that.
I don't agree.
I'm not asking you to do that.
I'm saying
Keep thinking. I'm asking you to do that. No, I'm asking you to consider the systemic problem of solving problems in the way that you are saying.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. I have told you before, I want to hear a better idea.
All right.
I want a better idea. I talk about secular Cornism. I agree with a lot of your ideas. I believe on social conservatism. I believe on all that. I want to see this idea of this republic lasting another 200 years. That's what I want to see. I'm hoping somebody can figure out some way to do it. How can somebody figure out some way to do that? I don't have the answer.
Well,
I don't have the answer, but I do know that I will not consider.
And talk about
I will not consider the United States if it goes socialist. It's not the United States anymore.
Well, the country now isn't what it was 250 years ago. So, what? I mean, what is the difference anyway? I mean, you have.
It's a big difference, Claire, because there's no way to turn anything around if we get into that. Once we're in socialist and communist, we're going to be just the.
Why do you assume that it's going to? Well, it's
because I know I see what's going on here.
No, I'm talking about. There's a progression. Okay, so what is the difference between here and China? I mean, obviously,
I'm not talking about China.
Well,
I'm talking about here and Europe. I'm not talking about China. I don't know what goes on in China. That's not my heritage. China is not my heritage.
You just organize things in a different way.
What? I'm not. I'm not. I have no comment about what China does for its political system.
Well, it
I'm
obviously cares
talking
about its
about the
people
United
more than
States.
Western governments do. It
I'm
obviously cares
talking
more
about the
about its
United
people, and the
States.
people trust it to run their country because that's what cannot be denied. I mean, the only reason why America wants to nuke China is because they think it's catching up on it that fast. And if they
What?
don't nuke it now, they'll lose the
No,
opportunity.
Claire. They're going after China because they're setting up in BRICS. And Saudi and some of the oil producing countries are also joining with them. Russia, Iran, and South America. And it's going into South America. It is a competitive banking system.
Yeah, they
This is
don't
what they're
want to
mad about.
be kicked
When the
around.
invasion of Iraq happened, it was in the newspaper back when newspapers were around, right? It was in the newspaper that they had gone in to set up the banking system in Iraq right after the invasion. And then I never saw another article about that. They already had a banking system in Iraq. This has to do
Saddam
with the
was
banking
proposing to
system.
buy
This has to
to
do
sell.
with
He was proposing to sell petrol, oil in euros, and that was what
no,
it
no, 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 Claire. Look. I'm talking about Iraq back when they had the invasion of Iraq when Saddam Hussein was in there.
That's what I meant. He proposed to sell oil in euros instead of dollars.
That's right. No, there were no euros. There were no euros then.
Yes, there was a
Saddam Hussein, look,
euro then when
that was before BRICS. BRICS is a little bit newer. BRICS is a separate monetary system
yes,
of
but by all
several
the countries
countries.
who got tired of being kicked around by America, they're going to
Okay,
have their own system.
Claire, it's a separate monetary system.
Yes, I
And this is
know.
what the World Economic Forum doesn't want to see. And this is why they give a rat's patootie what's happening in China. Okay, because China is part of it. China, they got two countries in South America. I forgot which two. Iran joining. Saudi has said that they will join after they tried to keep Iran out. They're trying to join India. They're trying to do a separate monetary system and get off of using the dollar as the reserve currency.
Yes.
Okay, this has to do with the World Economic Forum. This doesn't have to do with anyone being mad about anything else. They don't care.
America's obviously provoking a war.
Of course, America's provoking it because it's a vassal
So we're
state.
both agreed.
Claire, it's a vassal state of the World Economic Forum.
The
Of this
World
banking
Economic Forum
system.
can be ignored, but you won't do it because your politicians
Because
are in the pocket of the World Economic Forum.
oh boy, you're not
Yes, it
listening.
is. It's true, isn't it? Are you denying
You're
that?
not listening. You don't listen.
No, I've been listening to you the whole
It doesn't
time.
matter. The World Economic Forum has already turned the United States into a vassal state.
Yes,
There were
and
too
the only
many.
way
Can I
you can escape
finish?
of it
Can I
is
finish?
you've
Let
been
me
talking the whole
finish.
time. You've been talking the whole time. I've
Yeah, I've been
explained.
talking the whole time, and you let me. So what I'm saying is, though, the United States itself is a vassal state.
No, it can't be a vassal
But it
state because
is.
the WEF is not a nation. It is this organization that American politicians are happy to be bribed by. All right. So what is the WEF? It's basically a group of multinational companies who gather in Davos every year to decide how they want to arrange things and how different governments can better serve their needs. And that's what it is, isn't it? Well, you don't have to listen to them, but you have to keep listening to them every time you have an election, because every time you have an election, as I keep telling you, your political parties have to go cap in hand to
Going
put your corporate
socialist and
sponsors.
communist won't put an end to that.
What?
Okay, going socialist
I'm not
Right
saying go
now,
socialist. Why do you? Because you always. Why don't you say go fascist or go Nazi? Because
because the first
you're
step is
You're
socialism.
fixated on being
Listen,
socialist.
Claire, the first step is socialism. Then that
Okay,
moves
what's so
into
bad
let me
about
finish. Then it
socialism?
moves
What's so
into
bad about socialism?
its community control.
What's so bad about
Because
community
I want to
control?
decide how I raise my children. I want to decide, not the community do it.
Your
Right
community
going
will
on
give you
right
a choice.
now is
What
community
is it that
control of
you
children.
fear? You don't even have a choice now other than to not send your kids to school. So what
Well,
is
to
the
pull
choice
them
that
out,
you
I don't know, Claire, but I'm not going to hand them the way to, I'm not going to speed it up. I'm not going
Okay,
to
so
help
so
speed
you
it
think
up.
socialism will be LGBT?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's not a
But that's
traditional
not the whole
definition of
thing. It's
socialism.
listen, it's community control of the family. You want to talk about a patriarchy? It's community control. It is not parental authority. Right now, we're losing all the parental authority. You know it. I see it. Some people don't even remember what parental authority looked like. Socialism is the end of parental authority. Okay? I'm
So
never
no,
going
no,
to
no, but it
advocate
doesn't
it
make sense. What you're saying is
because it's community control.
okay. This is a special word to you, and I don't. Obviously, everything is community control. Local
No,
politics
everything
is
is not
community
community
control.
control. Claire, everything does not have to be community control. And I am not advocating more breakdown of the family. Socialism is a continuation of the breakdown of parental authority. Communism is even worse because you no longer have community authority in communism.
Okay,
Okay,
what is the
you're
difference
looking at
between
communism
socialist? Can we just
as
stop
a
it?
government
You're saying
structure
these words
setup.
and you don't bother defending them. So give us your nightmare scenario of communism and give us your nightmare scenario
I
of
just told
socialism.
you, Claire.
No, because you've already got this
Obama,
LGBT
Obama,
bullshit.
a child, a village brings up a child. This is socialist talking. A village brings up a child.
Where does that come from?
It's a socialist idea. All these things are disguised socialism, these different ideas. Parental authority is fathers in charge of his home, not the community is going to decide through the schools or through the community. The community is going to decide what you can or cannot do as a parent. I believe in parental authority.
Yes, so
Okay, socialism is not parental authority, no matter how you look at
okay,
it.
I'm not advocating socialism. So it's there's actually a Wikipedia entry on it. So apparently it's from a book by Hillary Clinton.
A single party,
Okay, so and it says African societies say the
a
sort of
single party
thing. African
in the
societies.
United States will lead to socialism. I don't know about other countries, but it will here. I don't care. I'm not talking about an African society. I'm talking about
I'm
here.
talking about where this
It will
proverb
go
came from.
socialist.
I'm talking about where this
Right.
proverb came from,
Talking about
which you
here.
attribute to
I don't know what would
socialism,
happen in
and I'm
England if
saying
you
it
tried.
comes from Africa, and
I don't care.
it's all this sort of African Swahili,
Proverb
Luno, Yoro, Kanya, and okay, you're roboting. I can't really hear you. And it's a book by Clinton.
being used.
I'm sorry, you're roboting. I know you're talking, but you're roboting.
What is essential here is where the proverb
You're
came.
roboting.
It's why is somebody repeating it?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear anything. Who's repeating what? Can't hear. It takes a village. Let's read the Wikipedia entry. It takes a village to raise a child is a proverb that means that an entire community of people must provide for and interact positively with children for those children to experience and grow in a safe and healthy environment. Attributions. Proverb has been attributed to African cultures. In 2016, the USA's National Public Radio researched the origins of the proverb but was unable to pinpoint them, although academics said the proverb embodies the spirit of several African cultures. Examples of African societies with proverbs that translate to "it takes a village" include the following. In Lunyoro, Bunyoro, there is a proverb that says, whatever in African, whose literal translation is, "a child does not grow up only in a single home." In Kihaya, Bahaya, there is a saying which translates as, "a child belongs not to one parent or home." Kijita Wajita has the proverb meaning regardless of a child's biological parents, its upbringing belongs to the community. In Swahili, the proverb means roughly the same. Whomsoever is not taught by the mother will be taught with the world. So it's not a particularly controversial saying. I never thought of it. I mean, I never found it to be objectionable. And talking about community control, I was reading recently about the mayor, which is something that was introduced by the Soviets. Even now, it's a space station operated by the Soviet Union and later by Russia. So they don't think it's a bad thing. Carol's in it in backstage, but she's not connected, so I can't let her in. So the mirror is also a payment system. So I guess it would be like what do you call it? Swift or something. Okay, mayor, I know is a village council. And it was something to do, I came across it in relation to the emancipation of serfs. So, what is it? It says, Mir in Russian history is a self-governing community of peasant households that elected its own officials and controlled local forests, fisheries, hunting grounds, and vacant lands. To make taxes imposed on its member more equitable, the Mir assumed communal control of the community's arable land and periodically redistributed it among the households according to their sizes from 1720. After serfdom was abolished in 1861, the Mir was retained as a system of communal land tenure and an organ of local administration. It was economically inefficient, but the central government, having made members of the commune collectively responsible for the payment of state taxes and the fulfillment of local obligations, favored it. The system was also favored by Slavophiles and political conservatives who regarded it as a guardian of old national values, as well as by revolutionary Narodniki populists who viewed the Mir as the germ of a future socialist society. Despite the efforts of Prime Minister Pyotr A. Stolypin, who initiated a series of agricultural reforms encouraging peasants to assume private ownership, the peasantry universally reverted to communal landholding after the 1917 revolution. So I don't see this as necessarily a bad hello.
Oh, there you are. Let me see. My internet pooped out,
Yes, it did. You were roboting away a lot.
and then I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it to come back on.
Hmm.
Actually, it wasn't the internet. It was StreamYard.
Was it?
Yeah, for some reason, I don't I don't know if the internet here is a little bit slow where I'm at right now, or if my computer's a little bit slow for the live streaming.
Well, I think that the StreamYard can be kind of heavy on, I don't know, bandwidth or something. Maybe
I
that.
don't. Yeah, I don't even know what that means. I don't know enough about computers.
Hmm.
But anyway, I just came back to tell you that because it wasn't like I hung up the phone. I
Oh,
wasn't
no,
hanging
I
the
didn't
phone
think
up.
you had.
No,
Um,
yeah.
but
Anyway, I don't
yeah,
want to keep arguing about it. I
no,
don't
no.
agree with it, and you don't agree with my analysis about it. But I live here, and that's what I see. That's what I
Yes,
see.
yes. I mean, I thought it was important to kind of, work out what you found horrible about socialism, and then you made a
Community,
distinction between
community.
that and communism, and so I was looking up the mirror. I don't know if you've heard of the expression, which is a village commune, which I
Oh, it
was.
doesn't matter where it came from. It's what it's being used for. And the Obamas were Clinton and them. They're basically were promoting socialist ideas. There's been a push. Socialism, kind of like what I call disguised socialism. That's what all these freebie programs are about too. It's a form of socialism being shown as humanitarian things. Anyway, but it's political. It's political ideology. I do not support the idea of community decision making in a family. I don't support that. So if we want a real patriarchy, we cannot have socialism. You understand? It's not father is the employee of the state or the community tells father what to do. That's not patriarchy.
Well, I mean, patriarchy, as far as I understand it, is the idea that most parents would be married parents, and then you would be a patriarchy.
No,
But
it's
if most,
parental. Sorry.
hmm?
Go ahead. There was a
And that's all
delay.
I'm saying. I mean, that's my definition of it. But if we're defining words differently, then we are going to misunderstand each other. I mean, patriarchy, as far as I'm concerned, is basically a society where most parents are married, and you're obviously a matriarchy if the opposite is the case. Uh,
Okay, but a single party state in this country right now would turn in the whole country into a socialist
I
state. And
Okay,
that
I
is the
understand it's not going to happen
patriarchy.
overnight.
No,
I
it's
mean,
happening overnight here, Claire.
okay, so you're saying what you fear is already here.
I'm
Okay.
saying I'm saying I'm not going to hand it to them any faster than I have to. If they're going to take over and do that, yeah, I won't live in the United States as a socialist country. If it goes full blown, it's community control. Socialism is, it's community control of resources and community voting on how the community is going to do things. It's almost like a commune or something. This is kind of thinking. This is not patriarchy.
Well,
This is not.
it's not necessarily not patriarchy, because I guess in the olden days, people talk about, we talk about families and communities, but obviously you can't have a cohesive community without families, right?
Okay, but under socialism, the family has less power. The family is not as independent a unit, okay, because it's community decision making on housing, on schools, on how you look, what you behave. This is community decision making.
But people had social pressures, even
Social
under
pressures isn't the
fascism.
same. You can say no to social pressures sometimes. You can say no to that, but you cannot get rid of community legally the community making the decisions like this. In
Sorry,
socialism,
what
people
what
vote in
decisions
the
are you
community.
complaining about? I mean, I don't even know what
I'm trying to explain it to you. It's more than just socialism is more than just freebies. What comes with it is community. It comes with it obeying community decision making. It's
but you
like if you
have
live
to
in
anyway.
no, you're not paying attention. It's giving into it more.
I'm saying
House.
at a local level, you have to follow certain rules, right? It doesn't matter where. That you know that.
No, Claire. They're interfering in family parental authority once you go into socialism. That's what's going
Okay, you're
on
talking
now
about
in
social workers,
California.
right?
They have interfered with parental authority. A
In
real
what, are you
patriarchy.
talking about social workers?
I'm not talking about social workers. I'm talking about socialism.
Okay,
I'm
can you
talking
give an
about
example? Can you give an
legally.
example of how parental authority is interfered with?
The school deciding your kid's going to talk to the shrink without your permission. The
Does
school
that
telling
happen?
you this is socialist behavior. This is a community has decided they can do with your kid what you're not don't want to have happen. This is community authority. This is a community decision making where your vote isn't the final vote. Okay? In a patriarchy, in a family, the father's vote is the ruling. That's the difference.
Yeah, but even the father is not not the most powerful person around unless he is
But he
the
should
most
be in the
powerful person
family.
around.
He should be in the family. And
Okay,
in
fine.
socialism, he is not anymore. So if we want a real patriarchy in the United States, we cannot let in any ideology that undermines parental authority. Okay, I'm trying to put it in terms that you'll get it. Socialism undermines parental authority
By
by your family's vote isn't the decision maker, by the community
can you
is.
give an example of whatever decision you're saying nowadays your school can.
I just told you.
Okay, you're
The
saying
school is set up by the community and they have decided they're the experts about your children instead of you. So we are going to mold your children because we are the experts. Your say is you can't have a say anymore.
yes. Well, I mean, when you have the banning of conversion therapy, that will be complete. You know about there being a ban on conversion therapy now? Do you? Arthur
Claire,
Goldberg.
that's not the only thing they do this with.
It's the worst thing, isn't it?
No,
It's absolutely the
they're
worst
doing
thing.
this. They're doing this. I'm saying what socialism leads to. And this is why I don't want it. It's because I
Okay,
do
did this
believe in
hypothetical
patronage.
was it a hypothetical situation when you said, "Oh, your school can send your kid to a shrink without telling you"? Is this what
No, that's
is
not a
this in
hypothetical
practice at the
situation. That is
moment?
not
Or
hypothetical. They
okay,
do
so
it.
it's happening now in the
They
States.
they have been undermined. They undermine kids' parental authority since I was in school. It's gotten progressively worse. And over COVID, they went gun ho. I know a family, not Muslim, nice little white family, whatever. The school, some teacher decided there's something wrong with the kid because the kid didn't learn how to read good enough. Well, okay, that's not quite what happened. What happened was you didn't notice they couldn't read until it was too late, the teacher, right? So they said they wanted her to go talk to the psychologist. So they were almost going to let her do it. And then they said, no, we're not going to do that. Because once you let them talk to the school psychologist, it becomes part of school record. It is not totally private. It can become part of your medical files. In other words, they're going to make judgments on your kid. So they said no. Find out that the shrink had showed up at after school care or at lunchtime, showed up at lunchtime and was talking to the kid on the playground. This is what's going on in the schools. It is a total undermining of parents.
So what happened to the
Extreme.
kid in the end?
What happened to the kid in the end is this happened while I was started tutoring her. They tried to, the school tried to act like it was a problem. The aunt said, no, we had no idea this kid couldn't read until that I had said this had happened. Um, and then they started trying to actually help her to read. But the thing is they were trying to undermine the parent over that they said she doesn't need to go see the psychologist. She didn't need to see a psychologist. The kid wasn't stupid. And second of all, they were doing this because they didn't want to get in trouble that they hadn't taught this kid to read, that the teachers didn't notice. The teacher didn't notice. So it's basically people covering their own rear end in their jobs, undermining parents. So this wasn't someone trying to turn the kid gay. This was someone trying to make it not her fault that she didn't notice for over half a year the kid couldn't read anything. You understand? But the school itself undermines parents. They talk about parents as if parents are the enemy and they're abusing you. And if they're abusing you, you can call this number, or you can call me and I'll be your little friend. And by the way, what did you guys all do yesterday? Let's write it in your journals and put it in your desk. And the teachers go read those. Dad got mad because my sister got caught smoking pot. And then he went and beat up the guy. Okay, you gotta have that stuff in a journal. Kids start writing down all kinds of things. So this is it sounds a lot like Nazi Europe or something. It's incredible. They don't need to be snooping into families' personal business like this. They don't need to be undermining the parents. When my kids were in school, one of them in her class, first of all, she was in a class, those kids have real problems reading. She could read and stop at a period because I taught her how to read. But the teacher told her, when you grow up, you don't have to be a Muslim. What business has she got talking to somebody else's kid like that? And she wasn't the only Muslim in the school. So why are you talking to someone else's kid like that? You're undermining the parents. I saw a situation, and this was a good answer. There's these two kids. One of them was mine. One was another one. And it was in this little preschool that we used to go to. They used to let me sit on the couch while my daughter was there, so she could always see me, but I didn't interfere. I read a book. Okay, I found a preschool that let me do that so she'd have some little friends to play with. So they're there. So they go running over. Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't preschool. It was kindergarten. They were running over to the kindergarten teacher. And she says, Mrs. So-and-so, the other kid, is Santa real? Is Santa Claus real? And then my daughter's standing there. No. And they're both standing there. And she looks at both those kids because they're kindergarten. And she's like, you have to go home and ask your parents. She wasn't going to touch that with a hot potato, right? Santa Claus real. She's not going to say, no, he's made up. She's not going to do that. It's going to ruin Christmas for this kid. My kid doesn't celebrate Christmas. You're going to say, yeah, and then Santa doesn't come to her house? This is what she said. But now what's being said to the kids are, oh, you feel like a boy today? Well, maybe you really are a boy. And we got this nice story here about a little boy who became a girl, and his parents are so happy he's his real authentic self now. This is an attack on parental authority. But that this is even happening is because community authority has got too big for its britches. Right? This is community. So community authority undermines the parent. Socialism is community authority, not family authority.
Well, this sort of thing could happen in a fascist or Nazi state, couldn't it? It's not
Yes, and
something
it
that,
happens. Look, listen, and in the United States, if you go single party, this is going to get way worse.
well, my only point is that obviously in the ideal scenario, this sort of thing wouldn't happen in a one-party state. They would the only party allowed in the land would govern in the national interest, and it's obviously not in the national interest to encourage your children to go gay and masquerade as a member of the opposite sex.
No, it's not.
And it
But I
would be
can't
used a
promote I
different
can't
rule.
promote the idea of a single party state in this country. I won't even say it to somebody, agree with it as a talking point or anything else, because it's already going to go into a socialist state. It's going to go socialism here.
Well, they don't do it in China, so you can't say it's a socialist thing.
Socialism here, if you go to a single party state, it will go socialist. It is almost socialist now. And we have two parties. We have one party fighting this. That party will be dealt with as irrelevant, and the whole thing will be handed to these people. There's so many socialist things happening here, and people, younger people and stuff, don't recognize it because they didn't even study this in high school at all. Okay, so if you're talking about parental authority, we're talking about the family unit of a family. The patriarchy is the father in the household. It is not the community. Socialism is community control, community vote. Communisms are like an end of that. I mean, you're not making any decisions under communism. You might tell them what you like, but you can't make a decision. And fascism, they're just going to tell you what to do.
Well, that's
I'm not advocating anything that's going to promote this, and I don't know how to get this idea of secular Quranism in without some kind of a war or handing it in and turning this into a socialist country. I don't want to see that here. I don't want to see that here. And it's not that it's necessarily bad if someone has a single party state or something, but it would lead to socialism here. It's almost already socialism now, and we're not a single party state. And a single party state, it's going to be even solidified in no legal way to collectivize politically against it. You end up with a situation where they get into all their bank accounts like they did up in Canada with those truckers, which they're trying to do here now. This kind of thing.
Yes, and you know the longer you don't fight back, the bolder they will become.
Well, yes, but you can't fight back with, we're going to have a single party state.
Well, that you have to give people the solution, because if all you're
But
going
that's
to
not
say
the
is
solution.
let's do nothing.
If that's the solution, you are undermining patriarchy itself.
No,
The
I don't
result
agree
will
with
be
that.
undermined patriarchy even more, and it won't fix everything, because a community authority will not let the man in the house be the man in the house. He is a weakened parental authority.
Yes,
He's
I
nothing. He is a
understand.
bureaucrat. You're reducing parents into being bureaucrats for the state.
It's just a question of degree, isn't it? It really is a question of degree, because
No,
obviously if
because that
you're
goes with
beating your kid
socialism.
and your neighbor is concerned about how you're torturing your kid, and
That's
they'll
different,
call the
Claire.
cops. I
That's
mean,
different.
is that community authority or whatever you
No, no,
call it?
no, no, no. You got to go look it up. You go look it up. I'm talking about where authority comes into these systems, as opposed to usually when people talk
It's
about it, they're
obviously
talking
about the
about
laws.
economics.
It's
Usually
about
when
the
people
laws.
No, usually when people talk about this, they talk about economics. Okay, we have many socialist economic things in the United States, public school, all that. Community authority means no individual family authority anymore. In other words, the power of the family is gone. The
Yes,
community
like
needs.
conversion therapy. You have
Okay,
heard of.
it's like having a bunch of different little tribes. No, it's like having a bunch of little tribes. They're all going to vote on something, and then you're going to have to do it as a parent. It means they can vote. They're all going to get together and say, "Yeah, you can't not go get that vaccine." So that's what's going on now. You can't decide what vaccine your kid has. The doctors are the experts, and we're the community say your kid has to have vaccine. This is socialism.
No, you're just assuming that obviously there will be some local structure where decisions
No,
are,
no,
are
there won't.
made, and you're assuming that they'll all be wrong. But and I can go with you on that because obviously if all the laws are wrong, then well, there will be bad consequences for people who are victims of these bad laws. You're roboting. You're roboting. Well, I can't hear you.
The community.
I'm sorry, Carol, but I couldn't hear what you were saying. Okay, so the problem I have is that with what Carol was saying is that obviously at the local level there will be, and I was talking about village council, a parish council. These old things existed. Obviously there will be a local authority, um, or a regional authority and a national authority, and this is how power is devolved. Obviously, if you're having a problem with the laws, then say it outright that you have a problem with certain laws and an excess of power given to people that would undermine your parental authority. And obviously, this sort of thing shouldn't happen. But if you have a government that doesn't care about paternal authority or parental authority, then obviously these rights are going to be violated. And the worst of this is that an interpretation of what the government is doing is to make heterosexual parents breeders of the next generation of gay and transgender people. You can look upon it like that. This is what the government is turning heterosexual married parents into breeders for the next generation of gay and LGBT, gay and transgender people. And obviously that is wrong. And so you change your moral system. So I think a lot of arguments are about two people arguing about a word, but they think it means different things. So I don't think local authority or having local authority is a problem because obviously you have a national authority that is over local authority, and then you have a local authority would be higher in authority than the parental authority. Look at it from the standpoint of the child. Obviously, the person who is most in charge of it is its mother, looking after it, and failing that, it would be the father who has to, who's supposed to be head of the family, and maybe the father, in turn has his own father who he would turn to for advice or discussion with his other family members. It really, in reality, won't be just one person deciding it, because there are all these sort of connections and links to a power structure. So what cannot be resolved in the family has to be resolved elsewhere. It will just go to a higher authority, and that's how power works. But calling it socialism, I don't think it's necessarily true. I mean, fascism can be bossy and overbearing and unnecessary, and so could Nazism or whatever ism it is that you don't like. But the reality of local, regional, and national authority would exist, because that's how governments are run. So I am going to end the stream. I don't think anybody's listening, but I'm glad we thrashed it out. I should retitle this "Talking to White Muslim Woman About." Carol's back again.
Well, I didn't know. This is kind of going on forever. I think you're staying up all late.
Yeah, I was just talking to myself about how I should title this stream before I go. And
Caliph blows her top. That might be a good one.
about the meaning of socialism, I think. Socialism and parental authority. So I think that's a fairly neutral way of describing what we were discussing.
Well, crazy ladies jacking. Let's see. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess we're all. Well, I think I'm ready for bed. Do you have any last words?
No, I don't want to talk about this single party state anymore, because I'm not going to agree with you. And I don't know.
We moved on to socialism and the definition of that.
But you don't understand. I don't know. I can't tell if you don't understand why I'm so against it or not. But
I know. Yes, of course, I understand how you would object to people with the wrong idea and the wrong laws interfering with your children, telling them not to be Muslim if you're Muslim.
I have a problem with the authority part.
But that's how it would work, whether the state is good or bad. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. Of course, there will be a local authority in your locality.
No, it's not a local authority. It has to do with parental authority. There's almost zero parental authority in the United States right now.
Yeah, because most households are single parent households.
In households where the fathers live there. Because the schools and the society have undermined parental authority, because it is going socialist. The trajectory for the United States is it's going to eventually become a socialist country if all this isn't turned around.
Okay.
Socialism itself is involved with community decision making. It's like if you move into a condo. You don't own your you own the space in between the walls. The community decides what you can do and not do with your condo.
Yeah, the management.
And then the next step is communism, where your vote isn't used for decision making anymore. Your vote is being used to express yourself or something, if they have a vote. That's the difference. And in fascism, they're not even going to ask your opinion anymore. It goes in a progression like that. And that's what I don't want to see.
Okay, I'm just saying, under Islam, there is a principle of shura, so you have to. Okay, you're going to say in practice they won't, but I'm saying this is what they're supposed to do. The government is supposed to consult with those it governs.
Islam never had some idea of what you're suggesting.
Shura, I didn't
The
make it up.
Shura did not have the idea that there was no parental authority. Tribal authority was always recognized.
Okay,
Tribal authority and
Westerners don't think of
tribal
themselves.
alliances, those were always recognized. It doesn't matter what Westerners
Okay, you're
are thinking
roboting.
about. The issue is authority. Authority. It's not an issue of Americans don't think of themselves that way. Okay, it has to do with socialism as an economic system and a government.
Okay, you've cut out again about socialism. It's silent now, but I'm going to bed. So won't continue with this. But I'm saying the power structure is, goes from national to regional to local. I mean, obviously there will be problems the if the laws are wrong. So you change the moral system that makes your laws wrong, and you also change the political system, and by the political system it means how you choose your leaders. And obviously I am proposing a change in the political system by saying, no more elections, have a one-party state. And then, of course, the question is how you're going to get it done. And I'm saying you have to get the idea talked about. And of course, my problem is that no one will really talk about it because either they're scared or they're stupid or they think it's boring, because if you can't talk about these things, then obviously these ideas will not spread. If nobody's interested in them, then the whole idea is a dead duck. But I'm surprised that nobody really wants to talk about these things, considering they're always complaining about it. So, in terms of parental authority, the ban on conversion therapy, in effect, reduces the parent to being a breeder, the married heterosexual parent to being a breeder for the gay and transgender community, because it's like the forcing married parents to produce the next generation of gay and transgender people. And when parents try and persuade their children not to be gay or not to change their sex, they are declared to be criminals. So this is obviously outrageous. And Carol was saying, oh, isn't this terrible, whatever. This is the worst kind of, well, this is the worst nightmare of all, isn't it? That your role as a parent can be so thoroughly undermined by the government with this crazy law. And so you have to change this moral system, which makes this sort of law possible. And this means a theocracy, doesn't it? Because it's only in the Torah that says men women should never wear each other's clothes. So we know in Judaism that they're very strict about gender roles. And I'm saying that the undermining of gender roles, making it what has undermined gender roles is the undermining of marriage. Because if most people wanted to get married, then they would be happy to perform their gender roles, because it is through the performance of their gender roles that you are able to promote yourself as a marriageable man or a woman. So if you're a woman, obviously, if you were looking for a husband, you want to look attractive, you want to seem sane, sweet-natured, good to be with, good mother. And if you're a man, you want to give the impression of being in control of his life, with a good job, good prospects, sane, that sort of thing. And these the performance of these gender roles would help us display ourselves as suitable marriage partners. But because most people no longer think it is necessary to be married in order to have sex and children, it is now the general attitude of people is that they think marriage is an extra, an unnecessary extra, maybe for others, but not for them. So if this attitude continues, you'll get the problem worsening. And to stop the problem worsening, you have to propose a solution. Obviously, it has to be a solution that, well, at the very least, would work in theory. So back to the question of how it is going to be done. You have to go the whole hog and say everything that needs. It's like you want something, you just make a list. You want to go on a picnic, you make a list of all the things you need to take on your picnic. And if you forget, what's your problem? You won't have your soda or your sandwich or whatever. So you make sure you have all the things that you need for your picnic. And this is all I'm proposing. So I'm saying it's not going to work under the current system. And I have been saying that under the current system, Americans or anyone in a representative democracy are basically surrendering more and more of their liberties after every election to the corporations that are the that are the donors of the political parties. So it doesn't matter which party wins. The party that wins will have donors who say, right, it is because of our campaign donation that you won the election. So how about you do something for us? And this is how it keeps going. So we've got to break that chain of being of political parties being beholden to their commercial donors. And this is a problem. Under the caste system, under the Hindu caste system, the top people are the priesthood, the Brahmins, and then followed by the Kshatriyas, the warrior caste, followed by the merchant caste, followed by the labouring caste, and finally, right at the bottom are the untouchables, who are basically unskilled manual labour. So under the system, why would the third caste, the merchant caste, be telling the whole of society what to do? It's crazy. So under the Hindu system, it's saying that the priesthood is the top. It's the top because, well, I don't know, they know how to read the stars, the wisest, the most learned, they know how to write, all that kind of thing. They put on the best shows to make people think that, God is in his heaven and whatever. So, in the system, it's clear that the priesthood should be the wisest because they advise the king. And if the king is wise and the priesthood is wise, then everything should go well. But if you give your commercial classes control over your national identity, then of course you're going to be in trouble. For one thing, the commercial classes are not worthy of that role. They're only there for profit. Well, they're only there to make a profit, and anything beyond that, they're not going to understand. So it's a question of who should be our leader. I know I'm saying we should have wise leaders. How we to define wisdom, and that's going to be another long argument. But I think we can agree that, if wisdom can be objectively measured, then we would like our leaders to be wise. And if we have a choice of leaders, we should choose the wise one, the wisest leader. And I am saying that if you have a solution, obviously it has to be a viable solution. It has to be based on undisputed fact and sound reasoning. So Carol and I are not agreed on the meaning of socialism and whether more voting would help. And I'm saying if voting is a problem, then stop voting. And then I guess a problem, Carol would say, is, well, are we going to surrender our rights to the government? And I'm saying the answer is no, because if we're going to go by Quranic principles of governance, we would have to use the principle of consultation. So even in a one-party theocracy, the government is supposed to consult the people it governs and not be too mean about it. There's a verse about talking about that. So, okay, I'm basically saying that China is more Islamic than America at the moment. So, although China is not Muslim, it is doing enough of the right things of being Muslim than America, and that this includes its one-party state. So, finally, I've finished my train of thought. I hope it makes some sense, and no doubt Carol and I will be discussing all this one way or another.